Hey friends, before we dive into tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of the people who watch these videos aren't subscribed? If you're enjoying this kind of content, consider hitting the subscribe button. It really helps a lot, and it keeps these long stories going. Also, I'd love to hear from you. What time is it right now where you are, and which city are you listening from tonight? And if these stories help you sleep, feel free to tap the thanks button to support the channel. It truly means a lot. All right, let's get into it. Shortly after 2:17 a.m., I got out of the patrol car and stepped into the silence of Hollow Pine Cemetery. The iron gate creaked as I pushed it open, an almost polite warning before I entered this world of gravestones and shadows. The beam of my flashlight pierced the fog in a narrow cone, illuminating the tops of the weathered gravestones. In loving memory, forever in our hearts, the inscriptions blurred by time and lichen. I've been a police officer in Fairfax County for 20 years. I've dealt with trespassers, drunks, and the occasional vandal, but never an open grave, and never a call like this. The report had been vague. Unit 12. We have an open grave in the old part of Hollow Pine. The caller is panicking. Check it out. That was all. No body, no suspect, just an open grave. Not exactly routine. I pressed my radio. Unit 12, copy, on my way. The gravel crunched under my boots as I approached the pit. 4 straight edges dug into the clay. 2 meters deep, no coffin, no signs of disturbance except for the empty hole. My breath formed little clouds in the beam of light. I knelt at the edge. Cold earth, smooth roots, and no footprints large enough for an adult. But underneath in the mud were small, bare footprints. A child's. They led to the mausoleum. I stood up, my heart pounding, and followed them. The fog swirled around my ankles. The only sounds were distant owl cries and the soft sighing of the wind in the bare branches. The door of the mausoleum was ajar. I drew my gun and my flashlight and stepped inside. The air changed. It grew darker and colder. My beam of light swept across marble benches and dusty wreaths, then fell on jagged letters carved into the stone. Bring him home. The scratches were fresh, the edges rough. A sob echoed. A woman? A child? I swallowed. Fairfax PD, I called out in a steady voice, even though my pulse was racing. If anyone is here, please respond. The sobbing stopped. Silence weighed heavily on me. I cautiously approached the sarcophagus in the middle. The nameplate read, Jonathan Price, 1974 to 2002. A missing person case from last month. 8-year-old Jonathan Price had disappeared nearby. No trace of him. I clenched my jaw. My radio crackled. Unit 12, headquarters. Do you read me? Over? The voice sounded far away. Roger that. I'm at the scene, at the mausoleum. I signaled for backup, but knew they were still minutes away. I felt drawn to the corner where the sobbing had come from. The beam of my flashlight revealed nothing, until the wall was suddenly covered with new scratch marks. A spiral. Desperate message. Take me home. Beneath it were tiny handprints in the dust. And then I saw him. A little boy with a dirt-encrusted jacket and hollow eyes that reflected my flashlight. He stood still, clutching something metallic, my flashlight, which I had dropped at the edge of the grave. My legs gave way. He raised the flashlight toward me and said in a hoarse voice, "Help me." I should have run away. I should have sent out a distress signal. But I took a step forward. The door of the mausoleum slammed shut. My heart was pounding. The boy's lips trembled. He's here. I swung the beam of light around. The corner was empty. The temperature dropped. My breath came in gasps. I fumbled for the radio. No answer. Only static. Behind me, the lid of the sarcophagus scraped across the stone. I spun around. The lid slid to the side, revealing the darkness inside. A figure stirred. I raised my weapon. "Stay back!" my voice echoed. The figure rose. An emaciated man in ragged clothes, his face pale, his eyes black hollows. Jonathan's father, dead for 3 years, killed in a car accident. He stepped forward, his mouth open in a silent scream. I fired once. The figure disappeared in a cloud of dust and an echoing scream. The boy sobbed and ran past me, sprinting down the steps of the mausoleum into the fog. I hesitated, then ran after him. I saw him near the open grave. He jumped in. I lunged forward, grabbed the edge. The pit yawned. His little hand slipped out of mine. He disappeared into the darkness. Reinforcements arrived. Spotlights flooded the square. Radios blared. I stood there panting, staring at the empty grave. They searched, found no boy, no body, only my fallen flashlight and the fresh scratch marks. Thank you for coming. Now I'm sitting in my patrol car, the engine idling, my notebook open in front of me. I've written the report: open grave, no body, unconfirmed sighting of a child, possible vandalism. They'll close the case. But I know what I saw. My hands are still shaking. Outside, the fog swirls, and I can almost hear breathing in the darkness. I shouldn't go back. But I will. Something tells me Jonathan Price hasn't given up on asking for help. And in my 20 years, I've learned that some cases never end, and some graves never stay closed. The morning sun was a pale promise, barely piercing the thick fog that still hung over the gravestones of Hollow Pine Cemetery. I had planned to go home and sleep off the adrenaline rush. Instead, I found myself back at the cemetery at 9:45 a.m., my uniform ironed but my heart beating restlessly. Reinforcements had sealed the grave and cordoned off the mausoleum with barrier tape, but the feeling that something was wrong lingered like a stain. I ducked under the tape and showed my badge to the patrol officer. He nodded curtly and stepped aside. Inside the mausoleum, the air was stifling, more stifling than the night before. The carvings on the walls had multiplied. New words were carved desperately and small at the foot of the spiral. "Don't leave me." My flashlight revealed fresh traces of dust on the floor, as if something, or someone, had crawled across the marble. I crouched down, my heart pounding, and followed tiny handprints that led behind the sarcophagus. There, half hidden in the shadows, lay a torn piece of fabric, muddy, with a flower pattern, small enough to have come from a child's pajamas. I put on gloves and picked it up carefully. The pattern matched the jacket Jonathan Price had been wearing in the missing person photo. I felt sick. I radioed the sergeant. "Evidence in the mausoleum. Child sleeve. Send in the forensic team." He arrived with 2 uniformed officers and a detective. They worked politely and efficiently, taking fingerprints and photographing the wall engravings. I watched, but my eyes kept wandering back to the corner where I had seen Jonathan's empty gaze. The spot was empty, but I could almost feel his presence, a slight weight in the cool air. That afternoon, I drove to the Price residence, an old Victorian house a few blocks from Fairfax High School. Mrs. Price opened the door with red-rimmed eyes. She held the scrap in a plastic bag as if it were her son who had returned. "Did you find him?" she whispered. My throat tightened. "Ma'am, we found this in the mausoleum. We're still investigating." She nodded, her shoulders shaking. He always loved that jacket." She paused. "Officer, promise me you'll bring him home." I didn't answer. How do you promise to find a ghost? Back in my patrol car, I went over every step again. The open grave, the footprints, the boy's whisper, the father's ghost. Every detail weighed on me like an unanswered question. When my shift ended, my replacement, Officer Diaz, got into the passenger seat. She looked at my ashen face. "Tough night?" I nodded. "Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain?" She frowned. "Sure, but I try not to think about it. Cops see shadows. That doesn't mean they're monsters." She smiled half-heartedly. I swallowed. "What if they are?" She didn't answer. The radio crackled. Another call. Domestic disturbance 2 miles away. I started the engine. As I drove away, I glanced back at the iron gate of the cemetery. The fog had lifted, but I knew the darkness remained inside. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in the silence of my apartment, staring at the ceiling, at the scrap of fabric on my nightstand. Memories came flooding back. Singing lullabies to my own daughter, the pain when she left for college. I thought of Jonathan, 8 years old, scared and alone in that grave. I closed my eyes and saw his hollow face, heard his pleading cry, "Help me!" At 2 a.m., I was back in my patrol car, waiting outside the cemetery gates. Diaz had parked behind me. She had volunteered to come with me. We crept in together. This time, there was no tape, no sergeants, just us and the gravestones. Our flashlights illuminated the mausoleum. It was colder here. Our breath formed little clouds between us. We stepped inside. The inscriptions now formed a jagged path from the wall to the floor. "He took him. I tried. Bring him home." Diaz's light fell on the sarcophagus. She frowned. "Why do you keep coming back here?" I swallowed. "I owe him something." She nodded slowly. "Then let's finish this." We pried the lid of the sarcophagus completely off. Inside, there was nothing but darkness, and a single object. Jonathan's flashlight, which I had dropped. The glass was broken. I picked it up. The beam flickered and illuminated the interior. The walls seemed to breathe. Behind us, we heard a soft scratching sound. Diaz spun around with his gun drawn. I pointed my flashlight at the noise. In the corner stood the boy. His jacket was dirty, his eyes sunken. He raised a finger and pointed upward. We followed the beam of light to the ceiling. A loose panel, its edges eaten away by moisture. I climbed onto the sarcophagus and pried the panel open. It gave way, revealing a narrow crawl space. Inside, the darkness seemed to be alive. I shone my light inside. Muddy handprints were smeared on the wooden beams, as if someone had crawled through. A latch clicked. Something moved. I radioed headquarters. Unit 12, I found a crawl space in the roof of the mausoleum. Possible access point. Send the fire department and forensics. While we waited, the boy remained silent and watched everything. Diaz whispered, "He's waiting for you." I nodded. Minutes later, the fire chief arrived with a folding ladder. I climbed into the crawl space. The beam revealed an old maintenance tunnel. Brick walls, low ceiling, dripping water. Footprints led into the darkness. I followed them, my heart pounding. The tunnel led down and opened into a hidden chamber beneath the cemetery. Rows of small coffins lined the walls, children's coffins. Each nameplate bore a name and a date, decades old. In the middle lay an open coffin, its lid removed. It contained earth but no body. Fresh footprints led from this coffin to a corner. I knelt down and shone my flashlight inside. A small skeleton, child-sized, wrapped in decayed fabric. Next to it lay a tiny jacket button, identical to Jonathan's. I felt sick. I radioed urgently. "Detective Barnes, human remains, juvenile, possibly historical, but there are modern disturbances. We need an archaeologist and the homicide squad." Diaz's voice crackled above. "You'd better take a look at that." I climbed out. She pointed to the wall, a new, bold, and simple inscription. "You broke it," the boy whispered. He was here. I looked at Jonathan. His eyes glowed with grief. Then he stepped toward the open coffin, reached inside, and disappeared. The door to the chamber slammed shut. I jumped up. The tunnel collapsed behind me with a roar of falling bricks. Dust filled the air. I crawled out while the firefighter shouted that everyone had to be evacuated. We rushed into the mausoleum just as the ceiling collapsed above us. In the chaos, I saw the open grave outside, freshly reopened, as if hungry for more. I stepped back, my hand on my holster, my heart pounding. The face of the young caller flickered in my mind. Her brother, lost. Now I understood. It was never about finding a body. It was about memory, about grief, about a place that wouldn't let go. They sealed off the crawl space. Forensics took samples. Detectives swirled around the skeletal remains. I wrote another report. Tunnel discovered. Remains of a teenager. Possibly a century-old crime scene, unsolved. But I know the truth. Something in that cemetery feeds on loss. Diaz and I left as the sky turned pink. She touched my arm. What now? I glanced at the sealed grave. Now, we wait because he's not done yet. And somewhere beneath the stones, Jonathan Price was waiting too. Waiting for someone to take him home. My partner Diaz drove us back to the station in near silence, the dashboard casting her face in cold blue and red. I sat in the back of the patrol car, my helmet still on my lap, the rest of Jonathan's flowered jacket heavy in my palm. The remains in that hidden chamber haunted me at every turn. Centuries of forgotten children, buried and then fought back into memory. I thought about my daughter's first year of college, the distance between us, the guilt that plagued me when I missed her calls. What if she disappeared and no one cared enough to dig her up? Back at the station, Detective Barnes stopped me at the evidence cabinet. His expression was grim, pale under the fluorescent lights. "Lieutenant Grant wants to talk to you," he said. "Homicide, forensics, medical examiner, you too." I nodded through clenched teeth and followed him into the conference room. The table was long, littered with papers and photos. Tunnel maps, skeleton photos, the message, "You broke it," carved into the wood. Dr. Malik, the medical examiner, pointed to the x-rays. The child's skeleton is about 50 to 70 years old, but look here, the thigh bone shows fresh stress fractures probably from crawling. And these root carvings, she tapped the photo of the carvings, are fresh. Someone was down there recently. The lead investigator from the homicide division, Detective Liu, frowned. "So we have historical remains and modern disturbances, possibly a current crime scene, but there are no missing persons reports that match." She looked at me. "What about the Price boy?" I swallowed. "He's still missing. We found his jacket sleeve in the mausoleum, his flashlight in the sarcophagus, and footprints leading to this tunnel. But no body, just the 100-year-old coffins." I placed the small piece of paper on the table. "And the carvings. Bring him home. Don't leave me. You broke it?" Barnes shook his head. "That sounds like a folk tale. We need solid evidence. Who had access? The maintenance logs show that no one unauthorized has entered the tunnel in decades. And yet someone broke open the paneling." My stomach tightened. Or something else. I glanced at the map of the surveillance cameras. The entrance to the cemetery is covered by cameras, but there are none in the mausoleum or the tunnel. Blind spots. Perfect for sneaking in. Someone or something. Liu looked at Diaz, who had joined us. "You two were the only officers on site overnight. Any leads on a suspect?" Diaz opened her mouth, then closed it again. "No human suspects, just a presence." She cleared her throat. "We saw a boy. He pointed out the panel to us." Silence. Barnes leaned forward. "A ghost?" He wasn't mocking, His voice was quiet. I looked him in the eyes. I saw him too. They exchanged glances. Dr. Malik cleared her throat. Belief doesn't change the facts. The remains were disturbed. We need to find out who did this and why. I nodded. I'll go through the patrol reports, question the janitors, anyone who has a key. Lou tapped her pen. And we'll catalog the tunnel, look for fingerprints and fibers. If someone staged this, we'll find evidence. When the meeting was over, I put Jonathan's button in my pocket and stepped out into the hallway. The guard room buzzed with radios and ringing phones. I felt detached, like a passenger in my own life. The button felt impossibly heavy, as if it carried the weight of all the lost children in that cemetery. That afternoon, I drove home briefly to pick up my equipment. Cold coffee, a thermos, spare batteries. I called my daughter and let it go to voicemail. I didn't have the energy for small talk. Instead, I left a message. I love you. I'll be in touch tomorrow. By nightfall, Diaz and I were back in Hollow Pine. This time with Officer Rivera, a forensic scientist, and McAllister, the cemetery caretaker, an elderly man who had worked at the cemetery for 30 years. He carried a lantern and a set of keys. His face was weather-beaten, and when he looked at the door of the mausoleum, he pressed his lips together. "I've never opened this door before," he said. "I didn't even know it was there." I looked at him. "You've been taking care of this cemetery your whole life?" He nodded with a hoarse voice. "It was my father's job, and before him, his father's. We maintain the grounds, mow the lawn, repair fences. We don't touch the mausoleum, that's not our job." Rivera took photos of his shoes, his gloves, and the door hinge. I shone my flashlight on the edges of the paneling. Fresh pry marks, wood splinters on the floor. I put a fragment in a bag. "Someone broke this open recently," I said. McAllister sighed. "Creepy place. People say it's cursed. Kids disappear, animals disappear. I avoid the old part after dark." Diaz looked at me. "We saw footprints, barefoot prints, in the mud leading to this paneling." He frowned. "Bare footprints? In winter? That doesn't make sense." I shivered. Nothing about this makes sense. We set about documenting the tunnel entrance. Rivera held a tape measure down. I shone my flashlight and Diaz looked for fingerprints. There, on the edge of the brick, were smeared grooves. A small handprint and the imprint of an adult's glove. We lifted them off. There were no fingerprints on the wood. Whoever had broken the slab had left no fingerprints, neither from gloves nor from fog. By midnight, the crime scene was sterile. Traffic cones, evidence seals, barrier tape. I stood alone in the mausoleum, flashlight in hand. The cold penetrated my bones. I whispered, "Jonathan, I'm working on it." The echo swallowed my words. There was a faint scratching sound above me. I looked up at the ceiling paneling. Dust was falling down. I climbed onto the sarcophagus. My boots crunched on debris. I reached the slab and pried at the edges. It was still loose. My fingers brushed against an engraving. Tiny letters, fresh, "Help him." Behind me, a sob rose. I turned around. No child, only shadows. My radio crackled. Headquarters was on the line. I pressed the microphone. "Unit 12, crime scene secured. No changes." I climbed down, my heart still racing. As I walked out, Diaz came up to me. Her face was pale. "Do you feel it too?" I nodded. "He's here." She swallowed. "What should we do?" I looked back at the sealed crawl space. "We'll wait for the coroner's report. Then we'll decide whether to exhume the coffins and search deeper." My voice sounded hollow, even to me. Diaz put a hand on my shoulder. "Be careful." I smiled weakly. "You too." We left the cemetery in silence. The gate closing behind us with a final click. In the patrol car, I clutched the button of my jacket. I thought of Jonathan's face, the empty, pleading eyes. The notebook on my dashboard was full of theories, but none of them explained the weight in my chest. At home, I dreamed about the tunnel. I crawled through damp brick passageways whose walls grew narrower and narrower until I could hardly breathe. All around me, I heard children whispering, "Take him home. Help me. Don't leave me alone." Then mud splashed in my face, and I woke up with my heart pounding. At 2:17 a.m., I was back at the mausoleum. Diaz's patrol car was parked outside. I entered without knocking. The carvings on the wall glowed in the beam of my flashlight. A new sentence, fresh and clear. "You're next." I held my breath. With trembling hands, I picked up my radio. Static. I pressed again. "Central. Unit 12, urgent." The line was dead. A whisper. "Don't go." The voice belonged to Jonathan. I spun around. No one there. The paneling above me gave way and dust fell on my shoulders. My legs were paralyzed. The whisper sounded again. "Stay with me." I swallowed. My hand clenched the flashlight. I stepped toward the crawlspace. The paneling creaked. My heart was pounding. Then I heard footsteps behind me. The footsteps of an adult, slow and deliberate. I froze. The beam of light illuminated a figure at the edge of the circle of light. A man in a police uniform, with an expressionless face and dark eyes. He raised a hand. I raised my gun. "Who are you?" He stepped forward. My beam of light fell on his badge. Fairfax County, Unit 12. My own name was on the name tag. I staggered back. "No, that's me." He smiled, a slow, hollow smile. "I've been waiting." His voice was mine, but older, hollowed out by years underground. The covering above me broke apart. Mud rained down. The crawlspace yawned. My doppelganger, my ghost, took a step forward. I fired. The shot echoed, and he disappeared in a whirl of dirt and static. The door of the mausoleum slammed shut. I stood there, panting, holding the flashlight in my hand. The engraved warning now read, "You broke me." I stumbled out into the night, my heart pounding. Diaz was standing next to the car, the radio in her hand. "Are you okay?" I was shaking. It was me." She frowned. "What?" I held out the button to her. "It's not just Jonathan, it's me too." Diaz's eyes widened. Behind us, the cemetery gate creaked. The fog swirled out and stretched toward us. Then I realized I wasn't just hunting a ghost child. I was becoming one myself. The beam of my flashlight split the darkness into narrow slivers as I descended into the narrow maintenance tunnel beneath Hollow Pine Cemetery. Every breath was rough and damp, the air thick with damp rot and the metallic smell of old earth. My boots echoed on the brick floor. Once neat mortar was now cracked, weeds growing between the joints. I kept the beam of light pointed forward and looked for the footprints Diaz had spotted. The small, bare prints of a child next to the larger, glove-covered prints of an adult. They led deeper inside and curved around a bend covered in condensation. I paused where the tunnel dropped down and opened into a low passageway. Water dripped from invisible leaks and collected in shallow rivulets that flowed into a distant darkness. My radio lay silent in my coat pocket. The battery must have died in the darkness. I tapped it. No spark, no static. I was alone. The only sound was my heartbeat and the softest scratching of something moving in front of me. I swallowed and forced myself to stay calm. "Jonathan," I whispered. No answer, just the dripping of water. I crouched down to examine the footprints. The child's prints were small, bare toes splayed in the mud, and the adult's prints were deep, as if someone had stood heavily on them. I ran a gloved finger over the edge of one print. The mud was still slightly damp, as if it had been made only a few minutes ago. I stood up and shone the flashlight upward. Above me were wooden beams covered in mold and mildew, and words were scrawled on one of them. "You are home." The letters were crude but unmistakable, carved deeply with fingernails or a sharp tool. I got goosebumps. I took a step forward and bumped into something lying close to the floor. I pointed the beam of light downwards, a small coffin lid leaning against the wall. It was the size of a child's coffin, and was designed in the same way as the coffins I had seen in the hidden chamber, with a curved top and decorated edges that had been dulled by the ravages of time. The wood was splintered on one side, fresh breaks exposing the pale interior. I knelt down and wiped away the dust. Faint initials were carved into the lid, almost illegible. J.P. My heart was pounding. I pressed my palm against the wood. It felt warm, as if it had just been carried here. The air moved. A faint breath brushed my neck. I spun around, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the tunnel, but nothing. Only bricks and shadows. Then a soft click in front of me, the sound of a latch being released. I moved forward with my weapon drawn until I reached a heavy metal door set into the wall. The rusty hinges squeaked as I pushed it open. Behind it was a small chamber with roughly hewn stone walls and a single narrow window high up, its bars bent. Moonlight streamed in, illuminating a dusty floor. In the middle stood a battered lantern, its wick black but intact. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me with a decisive clang, and my flashlight flickered. For a moment I was blind, then the beam stabilized. I shone it around the room. Symbols were carved into the walls, circles crossed by vertical lines, forming patterns I couldn't decipher. Below them were footprints, dozens of tiny prints surrounding the lantern, all pointing inward. When I looked, one print seemed to shift, as if someone had stepped on it. But when I blinked, they were motionless again. My chest tightened. I crouched down next to the lantern, my heart pounding in my throat. The handle was warm. I reached out, hesitated, then lifted it up. The metal was uncomfortably hot, as if heated from within. I set it on the floor and pressed the switch. A soft hiss sounded as a hidden fuel supply ignited. The lantern flared up and cast a flickering golden circle of light that pushed back the black fingers of the tunnel. The entire room became visible. In one corner stood an old suitcase. In another lay a child's shoe encrusted with mud, and 3 words were carved into the floor. "Finish what you started." I swallowed hard. The air was thick with tension. I picked up the shoe. It matched the footprints. Mud was still stuck to the sole. I turned it over. A worn brand label with "Price" scrawled on it in faded ink. My pulse raced. The trunk drew me to it like a magnet. I knelt down and pried open the lid. Rust flaked off, the hinges squeaked. Inside was a jumble of objects. A broken flashlight reflector, a tarnished police badge with the inscription "Fairfax County," and a ball of coarse rope. Underneath was a folded piece of paper. With trembling fingers I unfolded it. The writing was tight and uneven. He never left. I buried him wrong. Bring him back. No signature. The paper rustled like dry leaves. I held it up to the light of my flashlight. No watermark, no date, nothing. Just this plea. My stomach turned. I put the note in my pocket and stood up. The lantern flickered. At the edge of the cone of light I saw a movement, the shadow of a small figure crouching in the corner. I swung the light around. Nothing. The lantern flickered and threatened to go out. I dropped the trunk lid and grabbed my flashlight, my heart pounding. The door behind me rattled. I backed into the tunnel, the lantern in one hand, the flashlight in the other. The metal door clicked, It had locked itself. Panic spread. I rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The bolt was heavy. I pounded on it with my fist. The beam of light revealed footprints leading back into the tunnel. Mine, leading away from the door. Someone had opened it from the outside. I pressed my ear against the wood, a faint scratching sound, then silence. I turned toward the entrance of the tunnel. The darkness beckoned. I stepped forward. The light from the lantern went out and my flashlight carved a narrow path for me. With my heart pounding, I followed the footprints until I reached the bend. Then the tunnel opened into a larger cave, vaulted and silent. Dusty shelves lined the walls, holding dozens of small urns. Each urn bore a name, children who had died long ago as infants. Names I didn't know. In the middle stood a stone pedestal with a single urn on it, which had been broken open. Ashes were scattered on the floor. I approached. The ashes were fine and gray, mixed with earth. I knelt down, my heart pounding. In the ashes lay something shiny, a small button, identical to the one I was wearing, the button from Price's jacket. I picked it up. It crumbled to dust in my fingers, leaving only a black stain. I swallowed hard. Behind me, I heard slow footsteps. I turned around. The beam of my flashlight fell on a figure stepping out of the shadows. A man in a police uniform, with pale features and deep-set eyes. My reflection, and yet not quite right, the uniform was older, the buttons tarnished, the shape of the badge different. In one hand, he held a rope. "You shouldn't be here," he said in a low, hollow voice, my voice distorted. I swallowed. "Who are you?" He stepped closer. "I'm the one who stayed." He unwound the rope. There was a noose at the end. "You abandoned me." My breath caught. I'm sorry." He shook his head. "You buried me wrong. You have to finish it." He raised the noose. The cave grew cold. The urns rattled on their shelves. I backed away. "I don't understand." He smiled, and the tunnel seemed to pulsate with grief. "You'll find out." He dropped the rope. It landed with a hollow thud on the stone floor. He turned and walked away, merging with the shadows. I stumbled after him, but the cave was empty. The urn lay broken, the ashes gone. The lantern flickered and went out. Only my flashlight still shone, its beam trembling. I was alone. Then I heard a whisper, "Stay with me." It came from everywhere. I shone my flashlight on the shelves. The urns were shaking. The lids were moving. A lid slid down and fell clattering to the floor. Inside was nothing but darkness. My radio crackled. Static. Then Diaz's voice, urgent. "Unit 12, are you there?" Over. I fumbled for the microphone. "I'm in the tunnel. I've found something. I need to get out of here immediately." She replied, "Hang on. We're on our way." I put the radio in my pocket, picked up the lantern, even though the wick had burned down, and turned back toward the exit. The tunnel walls seemed to close in on me. The air became stifling. Every step echoed with distant sobs and whispers. "Help me. Take me home. You ruined me." I followed the footprints back, my heart pounding. At the bend, I stopped and shone the lantern ahead. The metal door was open, moonlight streaming in. I rushed through and slammed the door behind me. The bolt clicked. Relief washed over me. I climbed back up the ladder into the mausoleum. Diaz and Rivera were there, relief written all over their faces. Rivera took photos. Diaz grabbed my arm. "Are you okay?" I swallowed. "I found something worse." I held up the burnt button in my palm. "He's here, not just Jonathan, others too." Diaz frowned. "We have the coroner's preliminary report. The remains are old, but there are no signs of recent death. The boy's sleeve and flashlight are modern, but the skeleton is decades old." I nodded. It's as if the cemetery borrowed him and then returned him incorrectly. Rivera interjected. The uranium lantern you lit, it's from the 1920s. Radioactive, could have killed you. I raised my head abruptly. Radioactive? He held up a Geiger counter. It clicked softly. Elevated radiation. High alpha radiation. Someone used that lantern to cover up evidence. It's a relic. I swallowed hard. So, someone down there wanted to stay hidden. Diaz's gaze hardened. Or something. I looked at the open grave behind the mausoleum door. Wafts of mist rose from the surface. The gravestones stood as silent witnesses. My uniform felt heavy. The mud from the tunnel stuck to my boots. We have to seal it off, I said. Both the tunnel and the grave. Lock everything down until we know what we're dealing with. Diaz nodded. I'll call headquarters. I hesitated, then turned back to the mausoleum. My reflection in the polished sarcophagus lid flickered. For a moment, I thought I saw my doppelganger with hollow eyes standing behind me. I turned around. Nothing. At the edge of the beam of light, I saw the words engraved above us. One more step. My heart was pounding. I took a step forward, then stopped. My radio buzzed. Unit 12, Command Center. Do you read me? Over. I pressed the talk button. Roger. Tunnel secured. We found relics. We need a hazardous materials team. As I spoke, the beam of light fell on the base of the sarcophagus. Fresh footprints. Bare footprints. I swallowed. The lantern flickered. A whispering voice said, "Finish it." Then I realized that I had taken more than just evidence from this place. I had become part of its history, another lost soul in its silent registry, and the night was far from over. The damp air of the mausoleum clung to my skin as I crawled out of the crawl space, each breath heavy with dust and the metallic smell of old earth. The beam of my flashlight trembled on the engraved warning, "One more step," and I swallowed, my heart pounding. Behind me, Diaz's calm presence was an anchor to reality. He held the Geiger counter, its soft clicking measuring the residual radiation from the lantern light. Rivera sealed the tunnel entrance as investigators in protective suits rushed in to document the crime scene. I stepped fully into the mausoleum chamber, my boots leaving muddy footprints on the marble floor. The lid of the sarcophagus I had climbed onto had fresh scratches on the edges, tiny grooves made by desperate fingernails. I knelt down and ran my gloved hand over the lid. The stone was now smooth, as if worn down by countless touches. In the glow of the flashlight, I noticed a new inscription at the base, "Bring us all." A hollow pain opened in my chest. I pressed one hand against the cold marble as if I could feel the heartbeat of every lost child beneath it. The air vibrated with soft whispers, indistinct, overlapping pleas. "Help me, end it, take us home." I closed my eyes and the voices merged into a single sad chorus. Diaz cleared her throat. "Danny, we have to keep going. Command wants the chamber sealed until the forensic archaeologists arrive. They're bringing ground-penetrating radar." She put a hand on my shoulder. "Come on." I reluctantly got to my feet. My boots left a trail of mud. Rivera shook his head and laid out blue evidence markers. I followed Diaz to the door, but paused. The beam of light caught a movement in the corner, a small figure disappearing behind a pillar. I swung the lamp around. Nothing, just shadows. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Diaz frowned. "What did you see?" I shook my head. "Forget it." We stepped out into the cool night air. The cemetery was silent except for the hum of police radios and the distant creaking of the iron gate. Yellow spotlights illuminated the open grave, which was now surrounded by cones and barrier tape. Forensic investigators searched the area for clues. I approached the edge of the pit and peered into the darkness. There were no signs of recent disturbance, only the smooth clay walls and the footprints leading away. Rivera joined me. We packed up the fabric scrap and sent it to the lab. The tunnels are sealed for now. He tapped his tablet. Preliminary CAD mapping shows cavities under other mausoleums. More tunnels, probably a part of an old burial network. I swallowed. So, this isn't an isolated case. He shook his head. Not at all. Diaz slid in beside me. Whatever's down there, it's more than just a missing boy. I stared at the open grave. The mud glistened in the spotlight. The footprints were gone. Still, I could almost feel the pull, an invitation to climb down again. I forced myself to relax my jaw. Let's get out of here. We walked back to the patrol car in silence. My uniform smelled of damp stone and decay. I knocked the mud off my boots. My radio crackled. Backup had cleared the trespassing. Headquarters wanted a status report. I pressed the talk button. Unit 12 to dispatch. Situation stable. Forensics and hazardous materials on site. Request archaeology team, over. Roger. Unit 12, arriving in 10 minutes, over. I turned off the radio. Diaz looked at me. Everything okay? I exhaled deeply. I keep seeing him. Jonathan, or something that looks like him. She nodded. Me too. We returned to the patrol car. I sat down in the driver's seat and opened my notebook. Under unexplained phenomena, I wrote, open grave, no body. Footprints of a child leading to a mausoleum. Sightings of a boy and an adult. Hidden tunnel with children's bodies and urns. Carcinogenic lantern, radioactive. Inscriptions, bring him home, you broke it. One more step, bring us all. I added a note. Psychological effects escalating. Officers suffering from intrusive visions. I looked up as Rivera approached with a manila envelope in his hand. Preliminary results from the lab, he said. The sleeve with the flower pattern matches Price's jacket. No DNA, washed out. But we found fibers on the tunnel beams. Root fibers and human hair. Decomposed, but human. I swallowed. No living DNA? Rivera shook his head. Too old, probably mixed with soil microbes, nothing recent. Diaz frowned. So, the tunnel was used recently, but there are no human traces, just echoes. I tapped the envelope. And this? Rivera opened it. Inside was a single pale button, identical to the one from the coffin. Found under the edge of the open grave, he said. Fresh dirt on top of it, someone dropped it. My breath caught. That button was everywhere. I closed my eyes. It's like it's moving from place to place. Rivera nodded. We're cataloging all the button fragments. If we map their movements, we might see a pattern. I exhaled. Good. Do that. He left. Diaz slid into the passenger seat. Want me to drive you home? I shook my head. Not yet. I need to look at the graves. She sighed. Again? I started the engine. I need to understand this. I keep thinking if I just go back one more time. Diaz touched my arm. You're exhausted. You need rest. I smiled at her wearily. Rest won't help. We drove slowly through the rows of gravestones, the headlights piercing the fog. The cemetery was a grid of names and dates, infants, children, adults. I scanned every gravestone, looking for anything out of the ordinary. Fresh earth, disturbed grass, gravestones without names. At the other end, behind the old section, I spotted a lonely, sunken stone. No inscription, half covered with ivy. The ground around it was raised, as if it had been recently filled in. Stop, I pointed to it. Diaz braked. We got out. The stone was small, about the size of a child, a worn slab with no inscription. The earth beside it was soft. I knelt down and ran my fingers along the seam. Fresh clay. I brushed the leaves aside. A shallow depression, like an unfilled grave. Diaz peered over my shoulder. That wasn't here before. I pressed my palm against the stone. A whisper brushed my ear. "Stop it!" My heart was pounding. I stood up. "This is it." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I turned the slab over. Beneath it, faintly carved into the stone, was Price. I felt a chill run through me. Diaz gasped. "No, that can't be. The Price property is somewhere else." I ran my finger over the letters. They glowed in the light of my flashlight. The slab felt warm, as if it were breathing. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. Nothing but fog and gravestones. The whisper came again, insistent. "End it." I swallowed. "This is where he belongs." Diaz grabbed my arm. "No!" But I knelt down, grabbed the edge of the stone slab, and began to lift it. The ground shook. Roots groaned. The slab shifted, revealing a dark cavity. A foul smell rose from the earth, smelling of decay and regret. My flashlight illuminated wooden slats beneath it, another coffin lid. Diaz shone her light down. "Lieutenant, step back." I hesitated. The whisper grew louder. "Bring him home." I grabbed the lid and pulled it off. The coffin appeared, covered in mud. I placed it next to the stone. My hands were shaking. I reached for the clasp and froze. The lid fell off by itself. Inside was nothing but rotting emptiness. No body, just soggy wood and dirt. I swallowed. "He's not here." The whispering turned to laughter. The laughter of a child, hollow and triumphant. The inside of the coffin glimmered, revealing a muddy handprint on the wood. Small, perfect. It pressed against the air as if someone had reached in from inside. Diaz stepped back, his face pale. "Jesus!" I knelt down, my heart breaking. "I'm sorry, Jonathan." The laughter died away. In the silence, I could hear my own sobbing. I closed the coffin and placed the lid on top. The stone slab slid back into place with a finality that echoed through the rows. Diaz put a hand on my shoulder. "Let's go." I nodded, my voice hoarse. We walked away, the fog engulfing the fresh grave. My boots left prints in the soft clay, bare footprints. I looked down in horror. My uniform socks were splattered with mud. I had no shoes. I turned to Diaz. "My boots," she frowned. "They're in the mausoleum." My heart was pounding. I had left them there. The fog enveloped my ankles, cold and intimate. I walked faster. Diaz called after me, but I didn't look back. Because some steps cannot be undone. I didn't look back as I sprinted between the gravestones, the fog swirling around me like pale ghosts. My bare feet pounded the cold clay, each step a burning protest against the cold, until I stormed through the door of the mausoleum. Diaz was already there, the radio pressed to her ears, her face contorted with alarm. Behind her, Rivera and the hazmat team stood rooted to the spot, their instruments clattering. "They took your boots," Diaz said in a tense voice. "Why?" I swallowed and gasped for air. They needed them." I forced myself to calm down. "We have to cordon off the cemetery." Rivera shook his head, his eyes wide. "Lieutenant, the radiation levels just skyrocketed. The remains of the lantern, they're spreading." I turned back to the open grave we had covered. The spotlights flickered. In their light I saw footprints receding, small, bare ones, then larger ones covered with gloves. They led away from the mausoleum toward the oldest part of the grounds, where the Victorian crypts stood. The fog parted before them. Diaz followed my gaze. "They're disappearing." I grabbed her arm. "We can't let them get away." She frowned. "Who? The ghost? The killer?" I didn't answer. I jumped over the barrier tape and ran toward the crypts, Diaz close behind me. The cold night air bit into my lungs. Every gravestone we passed seemed to lean and watch us. The footprints led to a crypt with a collapsed roof, its stones overgrown with ivy. The entrance gaped like a toothless mouth. I stopped at the threshold, holding the flashlight in my trembling hand. The floor of the crypt was littered with broken coffins, wooden splinters, rusty nails, shards of porcelain urns. In the middle lay my boots, neatly side by side, with dried mud on the soles. Next to them was the price button, intact and shiny. I felt nauseous. I took a step forward. The button pulsed in the beam of light, as if it were beating like a heart. I bent down and picked it up. The air vibrated with distant sobs and the echo of childish laughter. I pressed the button to my chest. There was a soft rustling sound from the darkness behind me. I spun around. There, amid the debris, stood Jonathan Price. His jacket was clean, his face pale but unharmed, his eyes sad. Behind him, the gaunt figure in the old uniform stood with his arms crossed, leaning against a broken coffin and watching us. My doppelganger. Jonathan took a hesitant step forward. "You found me." His voice was a whisper, fragile. I swallowed hard. He raised a hand. "Thank you for bringing me home." His lips twisted into a sad smile. Then he looked past me into the deeper shadows. "But you have to finish it." My heart sank. "Finish what?" He pointed to a pit in the middle of the crypt, a jagged hole in the stone floor. Inside, I saw wooden slats and a darkness deeper than night. The child's footprints led straight into it. The adult's footprints circled the edge. Jonathan's father stepped forward, his uniform flickering like a ghost. He laid the rolled-up rope on the edge of the pit. "You promised," he said in my voice, which sounded hollow. "You owe me something." I staggered back. "No, not like this." He came closer. The rope unrolled and slid toward the hole as if pulled by invisible hands. The faint light of the lantern pulsed from somewhere below, illuminating the darkness. I felt its warmth on my face. Diaz's voice pierced the fog. "Danny, back." She grabbed my arm. I broke free and stumbled. The two in front of me disappeared into the fog, leaving only the end of the rope behind, which vanished into the void. The wind howled through the broken roof. The crypt shook. I noticed that the rope was taut. Something heavy was hanging below it and pulling it down. A corpse or something older. My radio buzzed like crazy. "Unit 12, Command Center, report." With trembling fingers, I pressed the button on the microphone. There's a dead body down here. I need a rescue team, hazardous material, immediately." Then only static. "Understood. Units are on their way." I turned to Diaz. "We'll wait here, but I'm going down." She shook her head. "You can't." I pressed the button in my hand. "This has to end tonight." I climbed to the edge, flashlight in one hand, rope in the other. The earth dropped away beneath me. The air was filled with whispers. Jonathan's pleas, my own voice echoing. "Bring him home. End it." I stepped into the void. The cold enveloped me. The walls glistened with moisture. Every step echoed. The rope creaked under my weight. I landed in a round chamber, the original burial site, untouched for a century. The lantern lay broken, the wick burned out. The coffins were gone, replaced by fresh mounds of earth. In the middle lay a small figure curled up. Jonathan, asleep or dead. I rushed to him, my heart pounding in my throat. He opened his empty eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. I reached out my hand. His hand dissolved into mist and swirled around my arm. The ground shook. Skeleton hands burst out of the freshly filled mounds. children's hands, dozens of them, reaching for the ceiling, their mouths open in a silent scream. The chamber filled with crawling figures, bone-white arms reaching out toward me. I screamed and crawled back, the rope slipping out of my gloves. The flood of skeletons swelled. I grabbed the rope, pushed myself off the wall, and climbed up in the flickering light of my flashlight. The hands clung to my boots, then let go as I got higher. The ceiling of the tunnel burst, debris raining down. Diaz's voice from above, "Hold on tight, we're pulling you up." I pushed off and climbed further, every meter a struggle. The roof of the crypt broke and moonlight streamed in. I fell through the hole, coughing and covered in blood, pulling the rope behind me. Diaz and Rivera pulled me out as the crypt collapsed with a thunderous roar, burying the skeleton chamber forever. I lay on the grass, my heart pounding, as the rescue workers arrived. Jonathan's figure hovered beside me, half visible, smiling sadly. He raised a hand in farewell. "It's done," I whispered. "Rest now." He disappeared into the night. The fog lifted. The open grave next to the mausoleum collapsed, and the earth closed over it. The ruins of the crypt smoldered under a layer of dust. Diaz helped me to my feet. I wiped the mud off my uniform. "Are you okay?" I swallowed. "He's home." I held out the prize button to her, black and broken. "It stays here." She nodded. "Let's go." As we walked back through the gate, the cemetery fell silent. The spotlights dimmed. The barrier tape fluttered in the wind. Behind us, the fog enveloped the ruins and hid all traces. I thought of the children's hands, of the rope, of the twins waiting. I thought of my daughter, who was miles away, safe. I realized that some debts are paid in nightmares, some promises are carved in stone. And although the graves are closed, the memory remains, engraved in mud, in bones, in the whisper of a child's plea. "Take me home." With a heavy heart, I got into the patrol car, finally back on solid ground. Headquarters cleared the scene. I radioed one last time. "Unit 12 secure. Cemetery closed indefinitely." Diaz started the engine. As we drove off, I glanced in the rearview mirror. In the fog behind us, I thought I saw a small figure standing next to the mausoleum, a boy in a mud-encrusted jacket watching us. He raised his hand gratefully and then disappeared into the dawn. Some places keep their secrets. Some souls find no rest, and some missions never really end. I get out of the patrol car and step onto the damp gravel path, where the fog creeps around my boots like pale fingers. It's 2:17 in the morning, and Hollow Pine Cemetery lies silent under the waning moon. The iron gate creaks behind me, an ominous sigh in the silence. The beam of my flashlight pierces the fog and illuminates rows of weathered gravestones, their inscriptions blurred by moss and time. "In loving memory, forever in our hearts, rest in peace." None of them warn of what lurks in the darkness behind them. I'm Deputy Sarah Mitchell, and I've been working the night shift in Fairfax County, Virginia, for 4 years. I've seen drunks lying on benches, trespassers looking for ghost stories, and the occasional act of vandalism. But an open grave? That's new. 20 minutes ago, the dispatcher's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Unit 14, we have an emergency call about an open grave in the old part of Hollow Pine Cemetery. The caller is hysterical. Check it out." No coordinates, no description of the suspect, just an empty hole. My stomach clenched as I drove here and the tires crunched over leaves. Now that I'm here, the earth yawns before me, 2 meters deep, perfectly rectangular in the soft clay. I crouch down at the edge. My flashlight illuminates the churned-up earth and muddy footprints leading to the graves. Fresh. Someone was here recently. I kneel down and follow the tracks with my eyes. They lead to a row of private family graves shrouded in fog, stone mausoleums half covered by wild ivy. The wind picks up and carries the smell of decay and damp wood. I swallow to get rid of the lump in my throat. Another branch cracks, behind me or in front of me. My heart is pounding. I press my radio. Headquarters, Unit 14 on site. Open grave confirmed. Footprints lead to the row of graves. Then silence. Understood. Be careful. Reinforcements are on their way. My footsteps echo as I follow the tracks between the graves. The ground is uneven, with broken pieces of slate and loose gravel under my feet. The beam of my flashlight falls on a half-open iron door of the next grave. The bolt is broken, and the door swings slowly back and forth. Knocking. Pause. Knock, like fingernails on metal. I hold my breath. I step closer, too close. The beam of light falls on scratch marks carved into the stone frame, deep, jagged, as if something had clawed its way out. I press the intercom button. I'm at Tomb 3, iron door ajar, scratch marks on the frame. No immediate response. Headquarters must be alerting backup. The knocking stops. I press, my shoulder against the door, and push. It creaks and reveals a narrow antechamber. The air inside is colder, drier, as if the crypt has its own microclimate. My flashlight sweeps across the floor. Overturned flower pots, muddy footprints, and scribbled letters on the back wall. Letters that seem to be made of dirt or ash. I'm watching you. My pulse races. I step inside, my boots leaving prints on the stone slab. The door closes behind me. My flashlight flickers. I freeze. Silence presses down on me. The only sound is my breath, coming in irregular gasps in the confined space. I press myself against the wall, my heart pounding. The beam of light catches a movement. A coffin lid has been broken open and splintered. No body. My skin tingles. I hold the flashlight higher. A soft moan comes from the darkness behind the coffin. "Police!" I shout, my voice echoing. My words go unanswered. I move forward cautiously. The moaning grows louder, like wood under pressure. The beam of my flashlight falls on the edge of the coffin. There, a pale hand, its knuckles white as moonlight, clutching the wood. It twitches. Fear overwhelms me. I step back and stumble over debris. The hand breaks free and a figure rises, emaciated, ashen skin, black eye sockets. It tilts its head and opens its mouth in a silent scream. My instincts tell me to back away. I turn around and yank at the door. It won't budge. Panic grips me. My radio crackles. "Mitchell, are you there?" It's Officer Chen. Relief and horror rise within me at the same time. "I'm in a crypt. There's something here." My voice trembles. "Call for backup immediately." The radio slips out of my hand. I catch it and press it to my lips. There's a corpse, or something, that came out of the coffin. It's not human. Even I find my words ridiculous. The figure comes closer, gliding across the floor. I raise my flashlight as a makeshift weapon and shine the beam at it. The thing leans forward curiously and then lunges at me. I scream and pound on the door. It springs open and I stumble into the night air. The fog envelops me. I run across the graves, the cold wind cutting into my face. Branches scratch my jacket. Behind me, the door of the crypt slams shut. I keep running until I reach my SUV. I throw myself into the driver's seat, my heart beating so loudly that I'm sure the reinforcements can hear it. I fumble with the door lock and then slam it shut. My flashlight is on the console, its light dancing across the dashboard. I see my reflection in the rearview mirror, pale, with my eyes wide open and a silent scream on my lips. Headlights cut through the fog. 2 patrol cars pull up. Miller and Chen jump out, guns drawn. I get out and say in a trembling voice, "There was something in the crypt." They follow my beam of light back to the open grave. Miller crouches down and shines his flashlight into the pit. "Empty," he says tonelessly. Chen's face turns white. "And no footprints leading away." I point to the row of crypts. It came from there. We move as a unit, shining our flashlights around. The door of crypt number 3 is locked, no scratch marks, no graffiti on the wall. Miller tries the bolt. It's stuck. Looks untouched. He glances at me. "Are you sure you didn't get the numbers wrong?" I shake my head, my voice firm. "I saw it. I heard it." The wind howls through the branches. An owl cries somewhere. We clear the area and mark the grave with barrier tape. Chen reports it over the radio. I lean against the SUV, the beam of my flashlight dancing on the gravestones. My hands are shaking. I force myself to breathe slowly. What else could I call? CSI, the coroner. "Keep the cordon tight," I say to Miller. "No one in or out until daylight." They nod, and I get back into my SUV. The engine starts with a noise that seems much too loud in the silence. I watch as they spread out and pierce the fog with their flashlights. I rub my temples and try to banish the image of the figure with the empty eyes. Then my radio crackles. Unit 14, Central. "Attention, we have another call. Second caller at 2:45 a.m. Report, someone, or something, is moaning near the old row of graves. It sounds like, 'Help.' A shiver runs down my spine. I lean forward. Send the coordinates. I grab my flashlight and head back to the cemetery. The fog has grown thicker and swirls around my ankles. Every breath tastes like damp earth. I follow the beam of light to tomb number 3, but the door is locked. No graffiti, no signs of forced entry. With my heart pounding, I press my hand against the iron. It's warm, almost pulsating. I take a deep breath and press again. It's pitch black inside. I step inside and hold up the flashlight. This time, the coffin is intact, the lid firmly closed. I approach cautiously, my hand on the wood. My fingertips touch the surface. It's damp. I shine the light upward. On the inside of the lid, in laboriously scrawled letters, is written, "Why did you leave me?" A whisper brushes my neck, indistinct, desperate. I spin around, nothing but shadows. I swallow hard. The door of the crypt slams shut. My radio cuts out, static, then silence. My flashlight flickers twice and goes out. I fumble for my radio, my heart pounding so loudly that I'm sure it would drown out the static. "Headquarters, Mitchell. In Crypt 3, radio out." My voice echoes unnaturally in the pitch-black chamber. I yank the flashlight from my belt and slap it against my palm. The beam flickers back on, weak and flickering, casting long, shivering shadows on the stone walls. My breath catches in my throat. The air is so cold that it feels like I have ice shards in my lungs. I force myself to keep going and follow the beam of light dancing across the coffin lid. The engraved words stare back at me. "Why did you leave me?" I press my fingers against the wet stone floor to steady myself. The whispering returns, soft, choppy, as if someone is exhaling after holding their breath for too long. I turn around, lean my shoulder against the door, and pull on it. It doesn't move. Panic sets in. I ram my boot against the wooden paneling of the coffin. It breaks. Splinters fly through the air. A soft, gurgling moan comes from under the lid. My stomach turns. "I'm a cop! Stay back!" I shout, even though I know there's no one else here. The lid shakes. The moaning turns into a wailing cry, a sound that mixes grief and anger. The beam of my flashlight swings upward and stops at hollow eye sockets peering through the crack. A pale hand pushes outward, fingertips grazing the wood. The thing underneath pulls itself up, ribs cracking, joints popping. It tilts its head as if recognizing me. I stumble back, my mouth dry. "Buy the book, use force," I mumble to myself, and feel for the taser on my belt. The scream grows louder. My fingers close around the handle of the taser. I fire. 2 darts pierce the creature's shoulder. There's a crackling sound. It twitches. Its body jerks, bone-white fingers claw at the lid. Then it slides sideways into the beam of light. My flashlight flickers, but not because of the impact. The creature now stands fully in front of me, impossibly large, with elongated limbs and skin stretched like parchment. Its head hangs down, its mouth contorted into a silent scream. It breathes through nostrils that burn like dark holes. I step back, taser raised, my voice trembling. "Stay down! Stay!" The beam wobbles. The creature leans forward, lowers its head. It moves with unnatural grace, stretching out its arms. I fire again. The arrows whistle, but it barely flinches. There is a sudden crack. The coffin lid splinters under its weight. The thing steps forward, each movement slow and deliberate. It tilts its head and looks at me with its empty eye sockets. Then it whispers, its voice like dry leaves, "Why did you abandon me?" My blood freezes. The words echo in the carvings. My mind reels. I can only manage. I didn't. My voice breaks. The creature comes closer. The beam hits its feet. There is no shadow behind them. It glides. I fire the taser again. This time the arrows smoke and fall uselessly to the ground. Adrenaline rushes through my body. I back away toward the door, my heart pounding. The creature's hand shoots out and grabs my ankle. I scream, break free, and stumble against the door. My shoulder hits the stone. I shake the handle. Suddenly it gives way. I stumble into the antechamber of the crypt and slam the door behind me. My flashlight hangs limply, illuminating the small entrance room. The silhouette of the creature appears in the narrow window of the door, large, motionless. I reach for my radio, dead. I tear open the outer door and rush into the night air. Cold fog envelops me. I gasp for air and run across the graves to my SUV. The beam of my flashlight dances wildly over broken stones and churned up earth. Behind me, the door of the crypt creaks open. The creature emerges and steps into the fog. It glides toward me, slowly and inexorably. I reach the SUV and yank open the door. I dive inside and slam it shut, locking all the doors. My flashlight rattles on the passenger seat, its beam dancing across the dashboard. I press the horn with my hand. 3 long blasts. The creature stands at the edge of the gate, head bowed, watching me. Then it disappears into the fog as suddenly as it came. My breath comes in gasps. The echo of the horn fades away. I lean back, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. My uniform is cold and damp. My radio remains silent. Moments later, headlights pierce the fog. Miller and Chen race toward me, weapons drawn. I yank open the door. "It's here, in the crypt, and it's not human," I gasp. Their headlights sweep across the rows of crypts. Empty, silent, untouched. No footprints, no broken bolts, no traces. Chen's voice is quiet. "Sarah, are you okay?" I swallow and try to steady my voice. I saw it. It asked me, "Why did you abandon me?" Miller covers his mouth with his hand. Chen's jaw tenses. The wind howls through the trees. The tape flutters on the open grave. "Central, Unit 14, we need backup urgently. Police officer injured. Mental health issues. Send a supervisor." I step back and stare at the tomb. The fog swirls around the entrance. The world seems to sway. My flashlight flickers once and then goes out. In the silent cemetery, the gravestones stand like witnesses, and somewhere, out of sight, something is watching and waiting. I slam the door shut and almost fall onto the driver's seat, where I breathe so hard that the seatbelt cuts into my shoulder. The fog from the cemetery presses against the windows, and the beam of my flashlight lies uselessly on the passenger seat, flickering with its last glimmers of life. Behind me, Miller and Chen come to a screeching halt, their headlights cutting two paths through the fog. Their footsteps crunch toward the SUV. I can hear their radios sending urgent calls for medical and psychological help, but I can hardly understand a word. All I can feel is the after effect of that creature's gaze, those empty eye sockets asking, "Why did you abandon me?" I force myself to stand up. I have to go back," I stammer hoarsely. Chen's hand on my arm holds me back. "Sarah, you just faced something inhuman. You need a minute." But I can't stop. The thing has slipped back into the crypt. It's waiting. I won't leave it there. Miller crouches next to the open grave. The barrier tape flutters in the wind. We searched the entire row. Nothing. It's as if it vanished into thin air. He gives me a worried look. "Are you sure you want to go back?" I swallow. My hands tremble on the door handle. I have to know what it wants. Chen exhales slowly. "We'll cover you, but we're going together." He nods to Miller. The two of them stand next to me as I unlock the door. Cold air rushes in, carrying the smell of damp earth and something even more foul, decay, covered by fresh soil. We step into the fog, flashlights held high. The cemetery is silent except for the sound of our boots on the gravel. Every breath feels like a gift. I play back the creature's whisper in my head. "Why did you abandon me?" Was it torment? Abandonment? A centuries-old grudge? We approach the third crypt. The door is closed, the bolt intact. No graffiti, no scratch marks. Chen tries the bolt. It holds. Miller shines his flashlight inside, empty. The coffin lid lies untouched. I step forward, my heart pounding. "It was here," I murmur. My voice echoes unnaturally. It moved the lid once. It spoke. Chen's light falls on my face. "You heard it speak?" I nod, my vision blurring. At that moment, it sounded human. Miller crouches down to examine the floor. "Footprints?" I shine my lamp over the floor. The dusty stone is clean, no traces, but I kneel down and brush away a few grains. At the edge of the dust is a single muddy smudge, as if someone had wiped their finger across the surface. I hold up my gloved finger, a smear of damp earth. "It touched that," I whisper. The three of us look at each other. The door of the crypt creaks softly behind us. We turn around. No one is there, only darkness. Chen shines his flashlight back inside. "Everything okay?" I nod and swallow hard. "Let's lock it." Miller wedges a steel bar into the bolt and locks it. We step back. The crypt door is securely locked. We stretch a barrier tape around the entrance. I press my hand against the tape and close my eyes. I imagine a barrier strong enough to hold everything inside. But I know better. We retreat to the patrol car. My limbs feel heavy as if I'm moving through water. Questions swirl around in my head. Who was that? Why did it want me? What did I leave behind? Chen breaks the silence. Headquarters wants a full report. What you saw, what it said. We stick to the facts: open grave, broken coffin, apparition. He pauses. Nothing about you losing your nerve. I nod dazedly. Yes. Miller glances at me from the passenger seat. Can you drive? I clench the steering wheel. My knuckles turn white. I have to secure the area. Make sure it doesn't get away. Chen sighs. You're not alone. We'll split the shift. We drive slowly around the cemetery. My headlights pierce the fog with 2 beams of light. Every shadow seems alive. Every gravestone becomes a watching face. I go over the police regulations in my mind, check grid sectors, maintain radio contact, watch for movement. After 40 minutes, I report in over the radio. Unit 14, perimeter security, grid Alpha to Delta. No movement detected, all quiet. Headquarters replies tersely, "Understood. Resume normal patrol." I turn off the radio, my heart still racing. A normal patrol seems impossible to me now. The cemetery is on the edge of our jurisdiction, a dark corner. I want to drive away, leave it behind me. But something holds me back. Duty, fear, guilt. An hour later, we return to Crypt 3. It's still hours before dawn, but the fog has lifted. Our flashlights illuminate the crypt sealed with tape. Nothing moves. Miller kneels down and takes photos of the tape and the crypt door. Chen notes the GPS coordinates. I stand next to him with my arms crossed, going over every detail again. I force myself to take a step forward. "Let's take another look inside." They hesitate. Chen shakes his head. "Not without backup and the right equipment." I nod, contrite. "You're right." Miller stands up. "We'll secure everything until daylight. Then we'll call the coroner and the Historical Society to see if there are any records of this crypt. Maybe we'll find out who's buried here." I swallow. This feels right. Investigate in daylight. Answers in the records. Closure, maybe. We put more tape around the crypt to seal it off. I touch the tape and whisper, "I'm sorry." Only the wind answers me. We get into the SUV. Chen starts the engine. We drive away, leaving the cemetery behind us, but its outline remains in my mind, gravestones disappearing into the fog. The SUV is silent. I close my eyes for a moment. Memories come flooding back. A hand slipping out of mine, long ago in another dark place. A broken promise. I tremble. The creature's words echo in my head. "Why did you abandon me? Did she see my guilt? My remorse? Or was she just imitating human grief to lure me deeper?" Miller clears his throat. "Sarah, talk to me. You're so quiet." I open my eyes. The streetlights blur. I lost someone. Years ago, my partner, Ambrose, died in the line of duty. I got the call. I was too late. I left him. My voice trembles. I couldn't save him. Chen exhales. "We all have regrets. That doesn't mean that this is related." I nod and wipe my cheek with my sleeve. Maybe. But when I was asked, I felt it. We drive into the station parking lot. The neon lights are bright. I turn off the engine. The SUV's interior lights flicker, revealing Miller's sympathetic gaze and Chen's tense jaw. I open my door. The cold air is sharper now. I get out. "I'm going home," I say. Miller puts a hand on my shoulder. "Take the rest of the day off. We'll keep an eye on the construction site." Chen nods. "Get some rest and find a therapist." I manage a weak smile. "Thanks." I go inside, my boots echoing on the concrete. At the police station, I am greeted by the normal hum of computers and coffee machines. I glance at the clock. 4:30 a.m. I type my report, just the facts. Open grave, broken coffin, apparition, graffiti reading, "Why did you leave me?" I note that the crypt has been sealed and backup called. I leave out the moans, the details of the figure, and my partner's name. The report ends with investigation pending review of records. I stand up and stretch my numb muscles. My reflection in the dark window startles me, pale, ghostly eyes. I blink and it's gone. Outside, the sky brightens at dawn. I drive home in silence, the streetlights going out one by one. My thoughts wander back to the crypt, to that hollow whisper. I replay every moment since getting out of the SUV. The grave, the footprints, the scribble, the appearance of the figure, the question. At home, the hallway is dark. I turn on the light in the kitchen and pour myself a cup of coffee with trembling hands. The steam rises and has a calming effect. I lean against the countertop and close my eyes. My radio is on the seat next to me, silent. My flashlight is on the floor. I think about leaving it behind and walking away, but I know I'll go back. At dusk, I'll return to Hollow Pine Cemetery. I'll stand in front of grave number 3 and face whatever awaits me. Because I left someone behind once, and I can't leave them behind again. The wind rattles the kitchen window. I look up. For a moment, the street outside looks like the foggy cemetery, gravestones in the mist. I shiver and lift my coffee cup. Then the sun breaks over the horizon and spreads warmth. I suppress a nervous, relieved laugh. The daylight is a protective shield. But I know it's fragile. The night will come again. And when it does, I'll be there, with a flashlight in my hand, ready to answer the question. Why did you leave me? And this time, I'll have to answer. The sky over Fairfax County darkens earlier than normal. Unnaturally dark clouds obscure the last light of dusk. I sit behind the wheel of my SUV, the engine idling, fog creeping like a tidal wave across a cemetery road. Next to me, Miller and Chen check their equipment. Spare batteries, spare radios, a motion detector we retrieved from the evidence room. We've cordoned off the third crypt, documented the crime scene, written reports, but none of it feels real. That thing is still in there, and I can't stop thinking about its question. Why did you abandon me? I step onto the damp asphalt. The night air is heavy, almost suffocating, and carries a half-forgotten smell of burnt leaves and rotting wood. My boots sink into the soft gravel as I approach the crypt. Miller's flashlight beam cuts through the fog. Chen swings the motion detector over his head. The small device beeps once, then falls silent. Nothing, Chen murmurs. I swallow and press against the barrier tape. It slaps against my gloves. Behind it stands the iron door, closed, silent and forbidding. I place my hand on the cold metal. Ready? I ask, even though I already know the answer. We are all ready. Miller pushes the steel bar out of the bolt and lifts it out. The door creaks and gives way. We step into the antechamber. The beam of my flashlight dances across the floor. Still no footprints, just the dust we brought in. I swing the light up to the coffin. The lid is in place, but I notice something new. A fresh mud stain on the corner, like a fingerprint dragged across the stone. My pulse quickens. I crouch down and examine the stain. It's damp and sticks to the edge of the lid. I glance at Chen. He nods and steps aside. I place my palm on the stain. It is cold and sandy. I lift my hand. Dark spots of earth cover my glove. Whoever, or whatever, was here touched the coffin again. A faint creaking echoes from the depths of the crypt. My heart is pounding. I point the beam at the back wall. The scribbled message is gone, washed away or scraped off. In its place, new letters are carved into the stone. I never went away. The edges are sharp, fresh. The words seem to pulsate in the beam's glow. Chen whispers, Jesus. Miller steps closer, his hand on his holster. What now? He asks. I swallow, my voice trembling. Let's keep going. I shine my flashlight on the coffin lid. Open it. Miller hesitates. The air in the crypt feels alive, as if something is watching from every shadow. He nods and grabs the edge of the coffin. Together we lift it. The lid gives way with a creak of stone on stone. The coffin is empty, but the air inside flutters as if something has just stepped out. A cold wind sweeps through the crypt. My flashlight flickers. I hear it again, that soft moaning rising from the depths, barely audible. The motion detector springs to life. It beeps rapidly and scans the air. Chen's light swings upward. Behind us, in the doorway, stands a silhouette. Tall, incredibly thin, with elongated limbs and a bowed head. Its hollow eyes reflect our beams of light. I step forward, my heart pounding in my throat. "Show yourself," I command in a voice stronger than I feel. The figure tilts its head and then steps inside. Its feet make no sound. The motion detector spins. Red lights flash. Miller raises his weapon. "Stay back," he warns. The creature stops, raises a hand. Long, fragile fingers spread out. It doesn't come closer. It looks at us with terrible silence. Then it speaks, in a voice as brittle as dry leaves. "You abandoned me." The words echo in the stone chamber. My breath catches. I glance at Miller, then at Chen. Neither of them moves. I swallow. "I'm here now," I whisper. She glides forward, weightless, silent, until she stands in front of the coffin. The beeping of the motion detector turns into a screech. The creature's head turns toward me. Its empty eye sockets seem to bore into my soul. "You abandoned me," it repeats, this time more quietly, painful, reproachful. My hands tremble on my flashlight. "I didn't know. I didn't understand," I manage to say. Memories flash before my eyes. Ambrose lying motionless on the sidewalk, the radio message I responded to too late, the guilt that drove me back to the night shift. The creature's form trembles. A swirl of mist and shadows envelops it, and for a moment I see a man. Familiar posture, ghostly eyes, then it resumes its elongated shape. The coffin rattles. The lid slides open by itself. Inside lies a single object, a tarnished police badge half buried in dirt. My badge number. I step closer, my voice trembling. "That's mine." Miller holds me back. "Sarah." I ignore him, reach in, and lift out the badge. It's cold and heavier than metal should be. Engraved on it, Deputy S. Mitchell, number 482. My reflection shimmers on the surface, distorted, with hollow eyes. The creature whispers, "You gave me your promise." Its voice sounds distant and familiar at the same time. I stare at the badge, then at the creature. I promised to protect you." Its head tilts as if to see if I mean it. The floor of the crypt vibrates softly, almost like a heartbeat. Dust falls from the ceiling. The tape on the door flutters. Chen's motion detector falls silent. Miller's flashlight flickers. The creature's form begins to dissolve. It melts into smoke and mist. It seeps into the walls, the floor, the air itself. Its voice fades. "Until the end." The lid slams shut with a loud bang. The crypt is silent. We stand there frozen, breathing heavily. I press the badge to my chest. The dust settles. My radio crackles. First distorted, then clear. "Unit 14, status?" I glance at Miller. He exhales, his voice hoarse. "We're unharmed." He raises his radio. "Unit 14 understood. Crime scene secured. We found the badge." Headquarters responds confusedly and orders us to hold our position until our superiors arrive. I swing my flashlight around. The crypt is empty. The fresh inscription remains. I never left. I step back, my heart pounding. Let's seal it forever. Miller pushes the bar back. Chen glues the door shut again. We attach wooden stakes and padlocks. I touch the marker one more time and then put it in my pocket. Outside, the wind has died down. The fog is lifting. Our footprints in the gravel are clearly visible. I stare at the third crypt. Now, it looks completely normal. just stone and iron. But I know what lies beneath. A piece of my own guilt that has taken shape. We get into the SUV. I close my eyes for a moment and try to calm the storm in my chest. When I open them again, the cemetery road stretches out empty before us. Chen starts the engine. Miller exhales. "Everything okay?" I nod slowly. I kept my promise, I think. I look down at my uniform, at the badge visible in my pocket. But it's not over yet. Chen's gaze meets mine. "What now?" I shift into gear. We'll monitor the area, cameras all around, motion sensors, security shifts, and I'll stay on the case until I understand it. My voice is firm. Miller nods. "We're with you." We drive off. The gate of Hollow Pine Cemetery closes behind us with a soft click. In the rearview mirror, I see the third crypt bathed in the light of our taillights, silent, waiting. Dawn will come. The superiors will arrive. Reports will be written. The badge will be back on my chest. But I know the truth. I left something behind a long time ago, and tonight it answered my call. And even though it said, "I never left," its question still hangs between us. Why did you abandon me? As the first rays of sunlight gild the horizon, I realize that this story is not over yet. The promise I made, in life, in death, in this cold tomb, echoes in every heartbeat. Night will fall again. And when it does, I will return, because some debts cannot be buried. The light of dawn creeps into the edges of my vision, but the cold in my bones remains. I sit in the driver's seat of the patrol car, the engine off, my heart still pounding from the exertions of the night. Miller and Chen have long since called it a night, exhausted, shaken, but I couldn't sleep. Instead, under the pretext of routine checks, I drove the route again. My ticket book lies forgotten on the passenger seat, open on an empty page. I stare at the crease and think of the badge in my pocket, whose weight constantly reminds me of everything that has happened, and everything I don't know yet. My flashlight, its batteries drained by the unnatural cold of the crypt, lies on the floor mat. The mud stains on its handle are stubborn and won't come off even after scrubbing them in the station sink. I rub it with a paper towel. Tiny specks of dirt crumble off, but the stain remains, as if it has eaten into the metal. I throw the paper towel out the window. The wind whips it across the cemetery road, fluttering between the gravestones before coming to rest on a granite stone. I press my palm against my face. 5 episodes of this night are behind me. The open grave, the initial terror in the crypt, the radio failure, the whispered question, the appearance of the badge, and the creature's final disappearance. Everything led here, to this tense pause before the 6th act. I realize that I have been holding my breath for hours. I exhale slowly and deliberately. My radio crackles. Miller's voice fragile. "Sarah? Are you still there?" I glance at my watch, 5:45 a.m., too early for superiors, too late for normal calls. "Unit 14 here," I reply. "Perimeter secured, no changes." My voice sounds flat, distant. I hesitate. "I'm heading back to the station." "Understood," he says. "Get some rest, Mitchell." I turn off the radio and the engine. In front of me is the cemetery gate, its iron bars dark and silent. I get out, my boots crunching on the gravel. The fog has receded but still hangs in low patches on the grass, like ghosts refusing to leave. The world feels empty, as if the events of the night had been a collective hallucination. I walk to crypt number 3. The tape and padlock are still there. I touch the tape carefully. It's cold. The lock is unremarkable. A standard model that Miller picked up from the supply closet. I try it. It holds. I lean my forehead against the cool stone of the crypt's outer wall. My breath fogs the surface. I whisper, I kept my promise. No answer, just the distant hum of morning traffic on Route 123. Even the usual birdsong of the cemetery is muffled. The world behind these gates has resumed its rhythm. Only here does time seem to stand still. I pull the badge out of my pocket and hold it against the stone. The sunlight glints off its surface for a moment, a spotlight in the darkness, and then disappears back into the shadows. I'm tempted to push it back into the coffin to seal that promise forever, but something inside me resists. This is evidence. It belongs in the evidence locker at the police station, not back in this tomb. I slip it into my breast pocket right over my heart. I take out my cell phone. A text message from Chen. Call me when you have time. I type back, meet me at the station in an hour. Then I hesitate and add, don't send backup. I have to face this alone, one last time, before daylight breaks. It's my decision, my guilt, and I have to pay for it. When I arrive, the station is quiet. The sergeant at the front desk looks up. On your way home? He asks. Just getting a coffee, I lie. He nods and goes back to his paperwork. I slip into the break room and pour myself a cup of black coffee. The warmth seeps into my hands. I hold the cup tightly and think about how normal this feels. Coffee at dawn after a long shift. But today, nothing is normal. I scroll through the digital report I've compiled. Dry, sterile, factual. No mention of moans or hollow eyes. Just open crypt, broken coffin, apparition observed, ID secured, crypt sealed, investigation ongoing. The words feel like armor, protective but hollow. I finish my coffee, take a deep breath, and go back outside. The sun is higher now, illuminating the wrought iron gate of the cemetery. I get into the SUV and drive in, ignoring the queasy feeling in my stomach. As I approach the third crypt, I see Chen's patrol car where I left it. He gets out as I park. His face is gaunt, his eyes bloodshot. You didn't wait, he says without reproach. I had to see it one last time, I reply. He steps beside me. I understand. We stand there in silence, looking at the crypt sealed with tape. The morning light transforms the fog into wisps of steam. A light breeze blows. The padlock glitters. I reach into my pocket and close my fingers around the badge. I thought if I understood why it asked me that, I could... My voice fails me. I could let go. Chen nods. And I swallow. I don't think it was about the badge, it was about me, about Ambrose. The name hangs between us. Chen's jaw tenses. He knows the story. My partner. Killed in a reckless chase. Me arriving seconds too late. The guilt I've carried with me ever since. Chen puts a hand on my shoulder. You didn't abandon him. You did everything you could. I look at crypt number 3, then at the disturbed earth in front of the door. Maybe, but it said, I never left. And you saw the badge, it was mine, but it didn't belong to me. It was something else. Chen glances at the crypt door. We have to open it again. My heart skips a beat. In broad daylight? He shrugs. With a team, Historical Society, Criminal Investigation Department, clergy, everything we need to document it. Let's shed some light on this. I nod slowly. Okay, we report it. Within 30 minutes, a small group arrives. 2 uniformed officers, an assistant doctor, and a representative from the district archives. They carefully remove the barrier tape and unlock the crypt. I step back to make room for them. The air inside looks normal. Dust particles float in the beam of the coroner's flashlight. The coffin lid lies flat and untouched on the coffin. The medical examiner's assistant checks the lock. The steel bar is gone. Chen and Miller must have removed it yesterday. The padlock is also missing. I step forward. Wait. My chest tightens. Something's different. The lintel above the door, which was previously bare, now bears carving so fresh that the edges are shiny. We're not done yet. The letters are engraved deep into the grooves and blackened. A murmur ripples through the group. The district archivist's eyes widen. "That wasn't there this morning," she whispers. My heart sinks. I reach out to touch the carving. It is warm and pulsing beneath my fingertips like a living thing. The medical examiner takes photos. The archivist takes notes. The officials shine lights on every inch. I glance at the coffin. The lid appears to be intact, but something about the seam seems off, as if it's slightly higher on one side. I step closer, my heart pounding. "Open it," I say firmly. The lead officer looks at me, confused. "Deputy Mitchell? This is my case," I say. "Please." He hesitates, then nods. They lift the lid. There's no badge inside, no soil. Instead, a folded piece of parchment lies on the velvet lining. I lean forward, my heart pounding in my throat, and pick it up with my gloved hands. The parchment is brittle and yellowed. When I unfold it, a sketch appears, rough but unmistakable, of two figures. One of them, a police officer protecting a smaller figure behind him. Beneath it is written in scrawled handwriting, "You kept your promise. Now keep mine." A shiver runs through me. I glance at the archivist. This writing, it matches the inscription from last night. She nods and whispers, "Same handwriting, same stroke thickness." My gaze wanders over the sketch. The smaller figure has no face, just an empty oval. The deputy sheriff's features are mine, down to the wrinkles in my uniform and the shape of my badge. I swallow. What promise? Chen's radio crackles. "Deputy Mitchell, Central." We're getting an emergency call from the old church, 3 blocks from Hollow Pine. It sounded like a child crying. Cold penetrates me to the bone. I turn to the group. "I have to go." The archivist steps forward. "Take the parchment, it's evidence." I fold it carefully into an evidence bag. The coroner closes the coffin lid. The group steps back uneasily. Chen and I hurry to our vehicles. The sun rises higher, unimpressed. My radio reports the emergency call from the church. We race off, sirens blaring softly. Every bump in the road echoes in my chest. I clench the evidence bag and feel the brittle edges of the sketch through the plastic. The church door is unlocked. Inside, the pews are empty. Sunlight streams through the stained glass windows, bathing the floor in colorful splashes of color. But on the altar, in the flickering candlelight, stands a single child's shoe, worn and covered in mud. Next to it, a small handprint in the dust on the wooden step. There is no child to be seen, only the echo of sobbing, as if the building itself were mourning. My radio crackles again. "Deputy Mitchell, backup is on the way." I end the call. My heart pounding, I step forward. I kneel down and examine the handprint. It's too small, from a child, and fresh. The mud on the shoe matches the soil from Crypt 3. I stand up and press my palm against the stone altar. A whisper penetrates the rafters. "Keep my promise." The words swirl around me. Neither male nor female, neither entirely human nor entirely different. I close my eyes. The memory of Ambrose's face, pale in the glow of the streetlights, comes back to me. The partner I left behind in that moment of failure. The partner who never left me. I put the evidence bag in my coat pocket. "I promise," I murmur into the empty church. My voice echoes back, "I promise." Outside, Chen finds me. "Are you okay?" he asks. I nod. even though my knees are weak. We'll look into it. I hold up the bag. We'll find out who or what left this here, and we'll finish what we started. He puts a hand on my shoulder. Together. I look back at the church, its stained glass windows glowing in the morning sun. Behind it lies the cemetery, its secrets buried in crypts and graves. But now I have a new lead, a new promise to keep. The night will come again. The question will arise again. Why did you abandon me? But now I have my answer and a promise to keep. As we walk back to the patrol cars, the church door swings shut with a soft click. The child's shoe remains behind in the silent sanctuary, a silent invitation. And somewhere, in the shifting light and shadow, two figures stand watching, one small, one large, waiting for the promise to be kept. My boots scrape across the gravel as Chen and I steer our patrol cars into the narrow alley behind the old church. The pale light of dawn filters through the bare branches above us, but the air is still tense, heavy with promise and fear. The child's shoe lies abandoned on the altar step, and I recognize the clay from crypt number 3 on its mud-encrusted sole. I enter the church again, this time with Chen at my side. There's absolute silence, broken only by the soft hum of our flashlights. The stained glass windows cast broken colors on the dusty pews. I kneel down again next to the altar and look at the only small handprint in the dust. It looks as if a child deliberately pressed their hand down to leave an invitation or a request. "Look," I whisper, running a finger over the outline. The dust gives way under my touch, revealing faint writing. 2 letters, almost blurred. A.B. Chen crouches down beside me. "Initials?" he asks. "Ambrose?" My throat tightens. The name of Ambrose, my lost partner, engraved here in this deserted place. I close my eyes and the memory comes flooding back. The screech of tires, the last radio message. Static, then silence. How I searched that street and called his name into the night. How I left him lying in the gutter. "Promise me," I murmur. He never left me. Now I have to find him. I stand up, my heart pounding. We search the church again. No child, no whispering, just dust particles dancing in the beam of light. On the floor near the confessional, I discover footprints too small for an adult, muddy little imprints leading to the side door. I follow them, Chen close behind me. Outside, the tracks cross the threshold and disappear into a patch of long grass between the church and the cemetery. I step into the dew-covered blades. The tracks reappear and lead straight to Crypt 3. My pulse is racing. The gate to the cemetery stands ajar, a silent invitation back into the realm of shadows. Chen turns on his radio. Headquarters. We're following footprints from the church to Crypt 3. Request perimeter security. I turn to the sealed door of the 3rd crypt. The padlock and tape are still there, but I notice fresh marks on the floor by the door. Tiny indentations, as if a small hand had pressed against the padlock before slipping away. My breath catches in my throat. I kneel down and brush the earth aside to reveal a shallow indentation in the shape of a child's hand. Above me, the inscription above the archway of crypt number 3 glows in the dim light. We are not finished yet. Beneath it, new words appear as if written by an invisible hand. Come and find us. I stand up, my voice trembling. They want me to open it again. Chen's face is tense. We need a search warrant. We need backup. I shake my head. Number. If we wait, they'll disappear. I glance at the child-sized handprint. You're relying on the rules. I've waited long enough. I pull out my badge, Officer S. Mitchell 482, and hold it against the stone. By the authority vested in me, I am opening this crypt. Chen hesitates, then pushes the padlock open. I pull off the tape. It snaps like a gunshot in the silence. My heart is pounding. I push the iron door inward. Inside, the air is unbearably cold. The beam of my flashlight flickers across the floor. No footprints, only our tracks. I look up, expecting to see the familiar coffin, but it's gone. The stone slab is empty. In its place is a shallow niche carved into the back wall. A small niche, about the size of a child. In the niche lies a bundle of fabric, a tiny coat encrusted with mud. Next to it is a tarnished police ID card, the same number, 482, but bent and blackened, as if it had been lying there for decades. I step forward, my heart pounding in my throat. I lift the coat. It is damp and smells of earth and time. I unfold it carefully. In the pocket is a folded piece of paper. With trembling fingers, I open it. The message is written in the same scrawled handwriting. You found me. Now find him. My breath catches in my throat. The words swirl around in my head. Find him. My partner Ambrose, the ghost I couldn't save. The child's shoe, the handprint, the initials AB. Everything points to him. A sudden scratching behind the crypt wall makes me spin around. Chen's light falls on something, an outline in the stone wall. He presses his palm against it. The wall gives way and slides inward to reveal a narrow tunnel that is damp and leads down into the darkness. A faint light shimmers at the end. I swallow hard. This is it. Chen raises his flashlight. We're going in together. I nod. I press the tiny coat to my chest, hold my badge high, and step into the tunnel. The air closes behind us with a soft bang. The beam of light reveals roughly hewn, damp stone walls. The tunnel slopes downward, each step echoing. At the end, we come to a chamber lit by phosphorescent moss clinging to the walls. In the center stands a stone pedestal. On it lies Ambrose's uniform jacket, immaculate, as if it had never been worn, with its shiny badge. Next to it crouches a small figure. A boy, no older than 6, pale as moonlight, his head bowed. Ambrose, I whisper. The boy looks up. His eyes are hollow, empty and yet full of sorrow. He raises a hand and points to the jacket. I step forward, my heart breaking. I'm here, I say. He stands up and steps back. The jacket slides off the pedestal toward me, the sleeves spreading out as if to welcome my arms. I put it on. The weight is eerie, partly comforting, partly burdensome. I look at the badge. Instead of my name, it says partner. The boy tilts his head. A whisper echoes through the room. You kept your promise. I close my eyes. Tears run down my cheeks. I'm sorry I left you. He raises a hand. Long fingers brush my cheek like a blessing. The room trembles. The moss glows brighter, illuminating the carvings on the walls, faces of lost police officers, names faintly engraved, including Ambrose. I realize this place is a refuge for those left behind, a crypt not of death, but of remembrance. And I have been called here to join them, to bear witness, to heal. The boy steps forward and merges with the sleeve of my jacket as I wrap it around me. Warmth flows through me. I feel Ambrose, not as guilt, but as a companion. The tunnel rumbles. Light streams in from above. Chen's voice calls, Sarah, we have to keep going. I step back. The chamber disappears. The tunnel lifts us up and deposits us in the antechamber of the third crypt. The iron door stands open to the morning. The child's coat lies folded on the stone floor. The jacket rests on the bier. The boy has disappeared. Outside, dawn has broken completely. Chen's flashlight beam is warmed by the sun. I take a deep breath. The weight of the jacket no longer rests on my shoulders, but in my heart. I put the coat and jacket in evidence bags. Chen puts his hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? I nod with a hoarse voice. He's safe. He smiles gently. So are you. We seal the crypt one last time. The inscription above it reads simply, "Ended." No trace of fog, no echo of moans. The cemetery breathes a sigh of relief. As we drive away, I look in the rearview mirror at the third crypt, silent, peaceful. The promise has been kept, the question answered. The boy, Ambrose, and I are reunited in memory and forgiveness. And although night will return, I know that I will never leave him, or myself, behind. The road leading out of Hollow Pine Cemetery seems endless, every gravestone and twisted tree reaching out toward us like skeletal hands. Chen drives in silence, the headlights piercing the thinning morning fog. I sit in the passenger seat, my hands trembling around the evidence bag containing Ambrose's jacket and the child's coat. Again and again, I press my palm against my chest and feel the steady beat of my heart. A promise kept, a debt paid. Behind us, the third crypt is sealed. The padlock is closed, the tape neatly crossed. The engraved message now simply reads, "Ended." The iron door is silent and motionless. The world has returned to its usual routine. Birdsong floats over the fields. The distant hum of a lawnmower drifts over, and a lone jogger runs past the cemetery gate, unaware of what happened here during the night. I close my eyes and let the sun's rays warm my face. Guilt, my constant companion, has loosened its grip. Ambrose is no longer present as an accusation, but as a silent confirmation. The boy's whisper has faded away, replaced by the memory of our heartbeats together in the darkness. Chen glances at me. "Do you want to report it? Or—" I shake my head. "Number? Let's wait. Let them find the jackets as evidence. Let the files show that we close the case." I unzip the bag and look inside. The little coat is carefully folded. Ambrose's jacket is wrinkle-free and unworn. They belong to history now. He nods. "You did well." I manage a small smile. We did well. We drive onto the highway. The traffic rushes by indifferently. I glance in the rearview mirror. The cemetery gate disappears. Grave number 3 is now just a dark dot on the horizon. Part of me wants to look away, to leave this world behind me forever. But another part knows that one day I will return. Not because I have to, but because I want to bear witness, to keep promises, to remember. At the station, we hand over the evidence. The lieutenant raises an eyebrow when he sees the coats and jacket. "A little unusual," he says. We exchange glances. The file contains an eyewitness account of paranormal activity, Chen explains. The lieutenant blinks and then shrugs. "File it. Good work, you two." In my locker, I hang Ambrose's jacket next to my own uniform, a silent tribute. I fold the child's coat, place it in a desk drawer, and put a photo of Ambrose in the pocket. As I close the drawer, I feel a sense of completion, as if a final chord has sounded. That afternoon, I patrol the streets of Fairfax County. Routine traffic stops, social checks, paperwork, but everything feels different, brighter, more real. The buzz of the radio is no longer empty noise, but a connection. Every name on the list, every call for help, reminds me why I became a deputy. As dusk falls, I drive back to Hollow Pine Cemetery. This time without Chen. I park at the side of the road and get out. The sky is pink and gold. I walk past the third crypt, which now lies silent under the evening sky. I place a single white lily at its foot. No ceremony, no tape, just an offering. I stand there for a long time, my head bowed. Then I whisper, "Thank you." The wind moves the petals of the lily. The door of the crypt remains closed. The inscription reads, "Ended," final, unmistakable. I turn and walk away, my boots crunching on the gravel, my heart lightened. The night will come again. Calls will be heard over the radio. The shadows will stretch out under the streetlights. But I carry the promise with me now, in every beat of my heart, in every breath I take. I will never leave her behind. And should that question ever arise again, why did you abandon me? I already know the answer. I didn't. I never thought I'd be patrolling a cemetery, but there I was, engine idling, radio silent, fog pressing against the windows of the patrol car like a cold breath. It was 12:03 a.m. when I pulled up to the rusted iron gate of Hollow Pine Cemetery in Fairfax County, Virginia. A county police dispatcher had sent me here after another emergency call. Open grave. Sounds like someone's been digging. I'd been with the police for 6 years, worked night shifts, dealt with domestic disturbances, and even a few burglaries. But a cemetery was something else. As I got out, the gravel crunched under my boots. My flashlight pierced the fog with a narrow cone of yellow light. Everything else merged into a gray-white haze. The gravestones stood like silent sentinels, overgrown with moss, their names weathered by decades of rain. I looked at my watch, 12:07 a.m. My breath formed little clouds. I pressed the talk button. Unit 14 at the scene of the crime in Hollow Pine, investigating a report of an open grave. There was static on the radio. Roger, Unit 14. No other units in the sector. Over. I swallowed. Just me. I clutched my weapon more tightly, even though I knew I should only draw it if I had a target. Protocol dictated that I first check the surroundings, survey the perimeter, look for footprints, mark anything unusual. I walked down the main avenue, shining my flashlight to the left and right. The fog muffled all sounds. My footsteps, the soft rustling of leaves, the distant hum of traffic on Route 29. An owl hooted, then there was silence. After 10 minutes, I reached the old part, crooked gravestones, Victorian tombs half overgrown with ivy. This part was closed to the public. Families rarely visited these forgotten graves. I shone my flashlight over a sunken spot in the ground. The open grave. It was shallow, maybe a meter deep, and roughly rectangular. The edges looked fresh. Clean cuts in the lawn, dark clumps of earth piled up at one end. No shovel in sight. No footprints leading away, only my own path back. I knelt down to examine the earth. It was damp, soft, and smelled of decay and earthworms. I tapped the edge of the pit with my flashlight. Wood. A coffin? No, just wooden planks lining the hole, as if someone had hastily reinforced it. I was shaking. My hand wandered to my radio. Headquarters. I found the open grave in the old part. No sign of a suspect, no footprints. Request K9 or backup. Silence, then a faint crackle. Roger, Unit 14. No dogs available. Backup in 10 minutes. Over. 10 minutes felt like an hour. I stood up and shone my flashlight around. The fog grew thicker and swirled around my ankles. I breathed in slowly and walked carefully around the pit, looking for cameras or tools left behind by intruders. Nothing. I continued on, circling the property, my heart pounding. My radio crackled, a hiss, then nothing. The display flashed red. Low battery. Great. I pulled out the spare device attached to my belt. My fingers trembled as I snapped it into place. The moment I pressed the button, a distant clang echoed. Somewhere, a gate or metal on stone. I spun around, swinging the beam of my flashlight. Nothing but gray pillars. I swallowed the fear rising inside me. This was my element, investigations. But this place didn't obey normal rules. The fog swallowed the distance, every shadow becoming a shape. I forced myself to keep going. The open grave disappeared behind me. I had to search the rest of the area before backup arrived. The path wound around a row of obelisks whose names were long since illegible. On one, I saw an inscription: Eleanor Whitlock, beloved daughter, 1883 to 1886. Tiny letters, almost impossible to make out. A breeze stirred the leaves. I heard the soft scratching of something being dragged across the ground. I shone my flashlight to the right. Handprints on a stone? No, just streaks of mud. My heart skipped a beat. I turned around. At the edge of the beam of light, I thought I saw a figure. A woman in an old-fashioned dress, pale, standing motionless between the stones. I screamed and spun around, but when the beam of light settled, there was nothing to be seen. "It's just your imagination," I muttered in a hollow voice. I radioed headquarters. Unit 14. "Do you read me? Over." The microphone crackled. "We hear you, 14. How's the connection?" I was relieved. "I've put in new batteries. Everything's fine so far. I'll stay on the edge, ready." I went further in. The path narrowed. Roots from old oak trees sprawled across the ground. My flashlight fell on a slanted, half-buried gravestone. I leaned forward and saw fresh scratch marks on the side, vertical notches, as if someone had tried to climb out of the grave. My pulse quickened. Whoever had dug this hole had been in it, or something had been buried and had freed itself. I stepped back. My boots slipped on the wet grass. I braced myself against a crypt wall. The cold stone pressed through my jacket. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The smell of damp earth filled my nose. A soft whisper reached my ear. "Help me." I froze, my heart pounding. The voice, childlike, distant, came again. "Help me." I turned around and searched. The fog cleared for a heartbeat, revealing the open grave, dark and empty. I swung my flashlight back, and the whispering stopped. Silence. I swallowed hard. I was alone. My training kicked in. Note everything. Stay calm, don't chase. Phantoms. I typed into my notepad, 021, heard a soft voice, no source visible. Possibly an acoustic hallucination or a prank. I forced myself to laugh bitterly. Paranormal investigators would have had a field day here. I was a police officer. I dealt with facts. I continued my search, staying close to the fence. Near the chain-link fence, the fog cleared, revealing the distant lights of the police station. I calculated. Backup would arrive any minute. I should turn back. As I turned, the beam of my flashlight fell on a fresh footprint. Heavy boots, covered in mud, right in front of the grave. It was unmistakable. Heel print, distinct pattern. It led south, away from the exit. My stomach tightened. I followed it, my heart pounding in my throat. Every step crunched. The path led to a row of crypts with locked iron doors. One door was ajar, just a crack, but enough. I approached with my hand on the handle. "Fairfax PD," I said in a low voice. "Come out, or I'll call backup." No answer. I pushed the door open. It creaked and revealed complete darkness. I shone my flashlight inside. Nothing but a narrow passageway lined with stone coffins. Damp drops echoed. My breathing quickened. I stepped forward and crossed the threshold. My radio crackled. "Unit 14, backup is on the way, over." I exhaled. "Roger," I whispered. "I'm in the crypt." I ran back outside. Within seconds, headlights cut through the fog. 2 patrol cars, engines idling. Police officers got out and held their flashlights high. I was relieved. I informed them. Open grave, footprints, whispering, crypt door. They listened and nodded. Sergeant Miller arrived. An experienced police officer with 3 decades of service. He looked at the pit and the footprints, then at me. "Good job securing the scene," he said. "Call for a forensic team when it's daylight. We're cordoning everything off." I felt relieved. I reported back over the radio. While we waited, I leaned against my patrol car, shivering. The fog swirled eerily around the headlights. I looked at the open grave. Something about it was unnatural. But rules were rules. Forensics would secure the evidence. We would write reports. I would finish my shift and be back in bed before dawn. Then I heard it again, a soft scratching coming from inside the grave. I froze. The other officers were talking on their radios and didn't notice anything. I shone my flashlight back. The pit was empty, so empty that it seemed to swallow the beam of light. The wooden planks on the sides creaked as if they were under tension. I glanced at Miller. He had turned away. My pulse was racing. I leaned closer to the edge. The scratching grew louder, rhythmic, like nails being dragged across wood. I swallowed. I raised my voice. "Sergeant, did you hear that?" He turned around with a frown. I shone my flashlight into the hole. Nothing. He stepped forward. "What's going on?" I opened my mouth. Then the boards broke inward with a dry crack, and something slid into the mud below. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. Miller lunged forward and swung the flashlight into the pit. The beam of light fell on a hand. Pale, slender fingers clawed at the earth. "Holy," Miller whispered. We both stared. The hand twitched. My training screamed at me to secure the scene, but my instincts made me step back. The hand withdrew, pulling something behind it, a figure, thin, emaciated, covered in mud. It disappeared into the darkness of the grave. It grew quiet. The only sound was my irregular breathing. The fog drifted away. The grave yawned, empty again. Miller shone his flashlight on me. "Did you see that?" he asked in a low voice. I nodded, unable to speak. Reinforcements arrived and aimed their spotlights at the pit. They saw nothing. Forensics would dismiss it as roots or animal activity, but Miller and I knew better. We both stepped back. The grave settled, earth shifted. There were no footprints leading back. The glove I had found earlier was gone. Miller closed the gate. "Let's get out of here," he said. I followed him, my nerves on edge. As the patrol cars drove away, the fog enveloped the cemetery, hiding its secrets once again. I looked at my watch, 1:02 a.m. 6 minutes until the shift change. I pressed the microphone. "Unit 14, over." My voice sounded hollow. I stared into the rearview mirror. For a moment, I thought I saw a pale face at the gate watching us. Then it disappeared. I drove into the night, the lights growing dimmer. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. My cell phone vibrated in my pocket. A text message from my partner. "Hey, everything okay?" Saw the call. Strange thing. I typed back, "Everything okay, just fog and old stones." I didn't mention my hand. Not yet. As I pulled onto the highway, the cemetery gate disappeared into the fog. I glanced at the row of dark trees and felt a chill that was colder than the night air. Some things should not be disturbed. Some calls should not be answered, and some graves are better left open. I step back into the fog, my heart still pounding, and continue on my way, knowing full well that I still have 5 more sections to go. The fog clings to my uniform, damp and cold, as if the cemetery itself were breathing on me. The beam of my flashlight makes its way unsteadily over crooked gravestones and gnarled tree roots. Every breath echoes loudly in my helmet. Every step a challenge to the silence that presses in on me from all sides. I circle the open grave one last time, and notice how the earth seems to settle, as if what had emerged has slipped back into the night. The leaf-covered path splits here. One fork leads back to the gate, the other deeper into the old part. Protocol would require me to stay with the grave until forensics arrive, but protocol just saw something claw its way out of this pit. Duty and instinct battle within me. I decide to take the deeper path and shine my flashlight on the cracked marble of forgotten crypts. My spare battery clicks in the side of the radio, but when I press the talk button, all I hear is static. Backup is on the way, but I'm alone in this stone corridor. The further I go, the thicker the fog becomes. The trees arch over me, their skeletal branches intertwined like praying hands. I shiver and wish I had brought gloves. At 1:07 a.m., I come around a mausoleum and almost trip over something lying low on the ground. My light falls on a small, mud-encrusted boot, a child's size, lying next to an overturned flower pot. The petals, once made of colorful plastic, are smeared with wet soil. My pulse is racing. I crouch down and see scratch marks on the sole in the light of my helmet. A tiny footprint leading south, back to the door of the crypt. I take a photo with my cell phone and radio. Unit 14. Found a child's boot at coordinates 3 Alpha, leading to a sealed crypt. No sign of anyone. Please send a response team immediately. The reply crackles. Roger. Forensics is on their way. Stay in position. I turn off the light on my cell phone, my heart pounding so loudly that I can almost hear it over the silence of the cemetery. A soft sob pierces the fog, a child crying, far away but unmistakable. My heart sinks. I sweep the beam of light around. Nothing. The sobbing returns, closer now, painfully sad. I follow the sound to a row of low stones. The beam of light falls on a small face, pale, tear-stained, eyes wide open, directly behind the next gravestone. Hey, I whisper, kneeling down. It's okay, you're safe. The figure, no older than 6, stands in an old dress, covered in mud up to her knees. Her lips are trembling. She raises a finger and points back down the path. They're coming, she whispers, her voice echoing unnaturally. Before I can answer, she dissolves into the fog, leaving behind only the echo of that word. Coming. My radio crackles again. Unit 14, the forensic team is on its way. Stay with the grave. I blink, my heart pounding in my throat. At the grave? Behind me, the open pit gapes, but I am rooted to the spot where the child disappeared. I dare to glance back. Only empty wisps of fog. I turn around. The door to the crypt is wider open than before, as if inviting me in. I put away my gun, raise my flashlight, and step toward the gaping entrance. The air inside is even colder, a tunnel of stone with condensation dripping from the ceiling. My boots echo on the stone slabs. I feel the weight of countless forgotten corpses above and around me. The sobbing returns, now right next to me. The cry of a child, painful and unadulterated. I continue further inside until the beam of light reveals a small niche, a relief carving of an angel with outstretched wings. Beneath it, scribbled in fresh mud on the floor, tiny handprints lead to a sealed wall panel. The outlines of the panel are only faintly visible, but I follow them with my flashlight. Something has moved here. My pulse races. I press my shoulder against the panel. It gives way. A hidden door swings inward on rusty hinges, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into the darkness. Regulations dictate that I retreat, but my curiosity and the memory of the lost child drive me on. Step by step, the staircase leads deeper down. The sobbing stops. The air becomes musty, like damp earth and decay. My light falls on a row of jars on a stone shelf, each filled with a cloudy liquid and small objects floating in it. I lean forward. Tiny shoes, scraps of fabric, a child's hair clip. My stomach turns. A soft whisper floats up. Free us. I turn around. The jars rattle as if moved by invisible hands. My light flickers. I pick up a jar. Inside is a small porcelain doll's head, broken and staring blankly. I drop it. It shatters on the stone floor. The whispering becomes a chorus. Dozens of tiny voices plead, cry, sing. Panic rises within me. I retreat to the stairs, then the door slams shut. Darkness engulfs me. My radio falls silent again. I pound on the door. "Help! Sergeant Miller!" Only echoes answer me. My flashlight flickers once, twice, then darkness. I feel for my cell phone, no reception. The singing grows louder and surrounds me. I turn on the light on my cell phone. A faint beam illuminates damp walls covered with childish scribbles. "Let me out. They took me. Don't sleep." My breath catches in my throat. A cold hand grabs my ankle. I scream and drop my cell phone. The light dances wildly and falls on dozens of pale figures emerging from alcoves, children in ragged clothes with hollow eyes. They approach silently. I run up the stairs, my heart pounding. The hidden door above me springs open as if pushed by an invisible force. Bleeding and gasping for breath, I stumble into the crypt's hallway. The door closes behind me with a final, echoing click. I keep running until I rush through the main gate into the foggy night, where reinforcements shine flashlights on me. They catch me before I collapse. I point back. They're down there. But the door to the crypt has disappeared and been replaced by solid stone. Sergeant Miller kneels beside me. "What happened?" he asks in a tense voice. I swallow my fear. "I found their children," I whisper. "They were buried alive." He helps me up. The forensic team finds no glasses, no stairs, only solid pit walls. The open grave remains open, the boot and glove are gone. The girl's voice echoes in my head. "They're coming." From now on, I refuse to patrol the cemetery. But sometimes at 1:13 in the morning, I wake up and hear soft footsteps in my hallway and a quiet whisper, "Let me out." The fog did not lift. I emerged from the crypt's corridor shaken, but the cemetery kept its secrets. Fog swirled around the gravestones and hid shadowy figures. I had barely caught my breath when reinforcements pushed me toward the patrol car. Their headlights cut sharp lines through the fog. I glanced back. The facade of the mausoleum looked untouched. The iron door closed flush with the stone. No sign of the stairs, no glasses, no children's handprints, nothing but intact masonry. I sank onto the tailgate while Sergeant Miller examined my wounds. My knees and palms were scraped, dirt and blood stuck under my fingernails. His flashlight illuminated my trembling hands. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "They're gone," I whispered. "But they're still here." I pointed to the crypt. He frowned and looked over. "Let's get you to a doctor." At 1:20 a.m., they drove me away. I watched as the cemetery disappeared into the fog. Even the open grave had been half filled in by forensic investigators with orange cones and barrier tape. A group of uniformed officers examined it with clipboards and cameras. I wanted to warn them. Don't lean in. Don't shine the spotlights into the pit. But my voice failed me. At the police station, my wounds were cleaned and bandaged. I gave a brief statement. I tripped over a stone step in the crypt, and they recorded it. The medical report noted minor abrasions, dehydration, and shock. I asked to be allowed to go home. I didn't want to answer any questions. I didn't want to think. That morning, the sun rose pale and weak. I lay in bed, my uniform still on the floor, and I heard every echo of the child's sobs, every clatter of glass. I closed my eyes and saw dozens of little faces pressed against the damp glass. The whispers, "Let me out." I forced myself to get up and looked at my phone. Apart from a message from my partner, there were no messages. "Heard you're hurt. Are you okay?" I typed, "Everything's fine. Just fog and stairs. Don't worry." I deleted the message. At 10 a.m., I had to report to my boss. In his office, I told him about the barrier, the open grave, the boot, the whispering, the crypt, the glasses, and the children. He leaned back and folded his arms. "There's no crypt on any of the plans," he said. "There are no missing children reports here. There's no access." He tapped his desk. "Officially, the status is open grave, no suspects, no evidence. We're closing the case." I nodded. Officially, the story was over. But unofficially, I knew what I had seen. I stepped out into the bright morning and drove home with the windows down. The warm air smelled of spring grass and mocked me with its normality. That evening, at 11:45 p.m., I returned to Hollow Pine, alone, without my badge or my gun, driven by an urge I couldn't name. The gatekeeper let me through. Fog enveloped my ankles. The cemetery was empty. I crept to the old part, my heart pounding. The open grave was untouched, a dark chasm in the earth. I knelt down and traced the outline with my fingertips. The earth was soft. I pressed my palm into the mud. Beneath it, I felt wood grain, boards, but no coffin lid. I dug with my gloved fingers and shoveled away the earth. At first, I found nothing. Then my fingers touched something smooth and cold, glass. I scraped away more earth and uncovered a half-buried glass, identical to the ones I had seen. Inside was a brown liquid. I lifted it out. The label was gone. Mud covered any writing. I carried it to the front of the crypt. The iron door was still. I pressed the glass against the stone. The wall groaned. A sliding door moved. My heart skipped a beat. A narrow staircase yawned once more. I shone my flashlight down it. This time, there were no figures to be seen, only damp stone steps leading down into the darkness. I swallowed. The air that flowed up was colder than a freezer, foul with earth and something even more evil, fear. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. Somewhere above, midnight bells rang. My boots echoed as I descended. The glass hit my thigh. I counted the steps, 50, 60, 70. At the end of the staircase, it opened into a low tunnel, 1 meter high, that led into the darkness. I crouched down and crawled forward, the beam of light moving across the damp walls. A whisper began. Soft voices sang, "Free us, free us." I followed the tunnel 20 meters to a cave-like chamber. It opened into a vaulted hall with stone pillars. Names were engraved on each column in children's handwriting. Annie, Robert, Emily, Jacob. Below them was a date, decades old. I shone my flashlight on the floor. Dozens of jars, each sealed, each containing a piece of cloth, a button, a toy wheel. The air vibrated with grief. My radio crackled unexpectedly, static, then the voice of headquarters. "Unit 14. Are you there? Over." I staggered. I pressed the talk button. "I'm in a crypt tunnel. Need pickup. Possibly miners. Alive?" The answer. "Repeat. We have nothing on the sensors. Please clarify." I looked around. No children, no ghosts, just glass and pillars. I put the radio away. A soft scratching sound drew me to the center, an altar made of stone slabs. On it lay a broken doll, its porcelain face staring at me. I reached out my hand. The air hissed, the glasses clinked. The singing swelled to a mournful howl. I staggered back as shadows detached themselves from the pillars. Hundreds of small figures, faceless children drifting toward me. I stumbled backwards, my heart pounding in my throat. The beam fell on a flat relief. a figure in a robe carving names into pillars. The figure raised its head. Instead of eyes, there were hollow sockets. It pointed at me with a skeletal hand. The singing swelled. "Come to us. Come to us." I turned and ran, up the tunnel, up the stairs. The can fell to the floor and shattered, liquid spraying out. The singing fell silent in a long, breathless silence. I rushed out of the crypt into the night. The door behind me closed with a soft click. I kept running until I burst through the gate into the foggy air. The patrol cars were standing there with their headlights off. I was panting as I ran, holding the flashlight in my trembling hand. No one saw me. I staggered back to my car, my hands covered in mud and something slimy, perhaps the spirit of this place. I drove home in silence. The city light seemed unreal, too bright. At home, I washed the dirt off my hands, brown grime and white spots that looked like bone dust. I scrubbed until my skin burned. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were red-rimmed, dark circles making me look hollow. I texted Sergeant Miller. "Something's wrong. They're still there." He called back once. "Get some rest." I turned off my phone. Now, the glasses lie broken in this tomb, their contents spilled into the mud. The children's names are still on the pillars, waiting. I dream of little faces crying for deliverance, of cold hands on my ankle. I wake up at 1:13 a.m., my heart racing, and I hear a soft tapping on my window, tiny fingernails searching for an entrance. 6 sections remain, 6 chances to end this, but every step closer feels like I'm sinking deeper into this grave. I don't know if I can stop, because they're coming. And next time, I might not get away. I hardly slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those little faces pressed against the damp glass, heard the soft scratching of tiny fingernails on my window. The morning light felt intense, too bright, and made the trembling of my hands visible as I poured coffee. The doctor called it a stress reaction. I called it reality. I spent the day poring over old files in the evidence room, missing persons reports, death certificates, cemetery permits, anything that might explain the names on those pillars. Nothing matched. No Annie Whitlock, no Robert or Emily in the Fairfax County records. It was as if the cemetery had swallowed them before they ever existed. By afternoon, my uniform lay forgotten on a chair. I changed into jeans and a dark hoodie and slipped out. I didn't tell anyone. Even Miller thought I was taking a break. But I needed answers. I drove to the county archives, an old brick building that smelled of mold and dust. The clerk raised an eyebrow at my press pass but let me in. I searched through the land registry records. Hollow Pine Cemetery was opened in 1852. Additional areas were added in the 1880s, 1920s, and 1960s. No hidden wings, no unregistered crypts. The construction plans matched what Miller had seen, no tunnel. And yet the stone was opened for me. I leafed through the microfilm death records, paying particular attention to the burials of infants and children. Hundreds of names, most long forgotten. Mary Ann Baker died 1879. Thomas Grady died 1885. But none matched the handwriting on the pillars. The scribbles were modern, written in the mud just a few hours ago. My heart sank. This wasn't history. This was happening right now. I took photos and notes, inscriptions on the pillars, shards of glass, the broken doll's head. I scanned until the film roll was empty. The employee asked if I needed anything else. I shook my head and said in a hollow voice, "That's all." Back in my patrol car, I scrolled through the photos. The broken pieces of the vessel lay in the crypt tunnel, the shards glistening like evil teeth. I zoomed in. Spots of something white, almost crystalline, stuck to the edges. Bone dust? I felt nauseous. I pulled the hood of my jacket over my head and drove toward Hollow Pine as the sun disappeared behind the clouds. At 10:45 p.m., an hour before my usual return time, I parked in front of the gate. This time, I didn't have my badge with me, just a backpack with a flashlight, gloves, and my service pistol. I told myself that I would go in, find the shaft, and end this. The gate swung open slightly, as if it had been expecting me. Fog swirled around the pillars thicker than before. I paused, my heart pounding, then stepped onto the gravel. The open grave yawned near the old part, its edges rounded by previous forensic work. The cones and barrier tape were gone. The earth looked untouched. I knelt down and felt with a gloved finger, wood grain, then cold glass. My hand closed around a small glass fragment. I put it in my pocket. Then came the whisper, soft, insistent, "Find us." I followed the path to the front of the crypt. This time, there was no covering, just solid stone. I pressed every joint. Nothing moved. Panic rose within me. I placed the glass fragment on the floor. The stone beneath it trembled, and a thin crack formed around a familiar outline. The hidden door. I stepped back as the covering opened silently. The staircase yawned, darker than the night. I swallowed. Midnight air poured out, smelling of decay and grief. I shone my lamp down. The steps were muddy. I climbed up carefully, taking care not to step on any broken glass. Below, the tunnel stretched out, with small niches in the walls. In each niche stood a glass, or what was left of it. I counted 7 empty niches and 6 broken shards. 6 children. In one niche, there was still an intact glass. I approached it. The surface of the glass was opaque with dirt. I wiped a path clear with my sleeve. Something pale and twisted was floating inside, tiny, motionless. I pressed my face close. It looked like a small shoe, a child's shoe, covered in mud. My breath caught in my throat. The whispering swelled into a chorus. "Help us. Free us." I fumbled for the glass and lifted it up. The moment I opened the lid, a scream rang out. A high-pitched, shrill scream that shook me to the core. I staggered and pressed the jar to my chest. Silence fell. I noticed that the other jars were rattling and the lids were turning. I ran to the stairs, but something was blocking my way. There stood a small figure, a girl in a pale dress, mud dripping from her. Her eyes were empty sockets. She stared at me, her head bowed. I froze. She raised a finger and pointed deeper into the tunnel. Behind her, shadows merged. Other children, silent, shuffling forward. Adrenaline shot through my body. I fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Concrete splintered. The children stopped, headless figures in the beam of light. The girl stepped aside. The tunnel behind her seemed to pulsate with darkness. I clutched the glass. My rational mind screamed at me to drop it and run. But I knew that if I abandoned them again, their voices would never be silenced. I swallowed and walked past the girl, deeper into the tunnel. The air grew warmer, foul-smelling. The singing began again. "Free us. Free us." The walls were dripping. I reached a vaulted chamber I hadn't seen before, a round room with 6 pillars, each engraved with a name. In the middle stood a stone pedestal. On it stood the last glass, intact and shiny. I placed the glass on the floor and approached the pedestal. The light from my flashlight fell on shapes carved into the stone. 6 figures of children chained to the pedestal. The chains led to the walls, where each pillar bore the inscription. I knelt down and lifted the lid of the vessel in my hands. The liquid inside was oily black. I hesitated, then poured it onto the pedestal and let it spread around the carved figures. The stone absorbed it, dark veins spreading out. A thunderous bang echoed. The chains carved into the pedestal began to glow, soft blue lines spreading across the floor to the pillars. The screams grew louder, a crescendo of agony. The floor shook. I staggered back. The can slipped from my hand and spilled the last of its contents. The liquid hissed on the stone and turned to steam. The glow along the chains pulsed and then faded. The carved chains shattered like glass. It became silent, completely, suffocatingly silent. The steam condensed into particles of light that floated upward. The girl stretched out her hands, her ghostly fingers brushing the air. Her hollow eyes softened. She smiled, a sad, radiant smile. Then she was gone. The points of light floated up to the ceiling of the tunnel and disappeared. The air cleared. The last can lay empty on the platform. The voices had fallen silent. My heart pounded with relief and sadness. I gathered the shards of the cans and put them in my backpack. The tunnel wall groaned and began to close. I turned around, sprinted up the steps, and rushed out into the cemetery night just as the wall closed forever. I didn't wait for backup. I ran to my car, locked the door, and drove off without looking back. The gate swung shut behind me. The fog swallowed the entrance. With tears in my eyes, I raced home. Tears for the children I had freed and for the madness I had survived. At home, I locked all the doors and windows. I scattered the shards of glass in the trash and washed away the muddy fragments. Nothing remained but the memory and the names carved in stone. At 3:17 in the morning, I collapsed into bed, exhausted. My dreams were silent, but I know they are free, and I know that they will watch over me now, silent guardians in the fog. The sunrise was a lie, pale, weak, and without comfort. When I crawled out of bed, my uniform lay neatly folded on a chair, untouched. I stuffed it into my travel bag along with the broken glass shards, careful not to think about the children's names carved in stone. Annie, Robert, Emily, Jacob, Lily, Marcus, 6 freed, 1 left. Today, I would finish this or die trying. At 10:30 p.m., I drove to Hollow Pine Cemetery and arrived before the iron bars of the gate were closed for the night. The guard nodded briefly. He had learned not to ask questions. Wafts of fog settled over the cemetery like living silk. I stepped inside, my heart pounding in my chest, and went straight to the old section. The open grave lay untouched. The mud had been smoothed by the first investigators and then left behind. I knelt down, pressed my palm into the damp earth, and felt the hollow wood beneath. I pried at the boards with my fingers until a corner gave way. There was nothing left underneath, no coffin, no container. Whatever had been in it was gone. I wiped my hands on my jeans and stood up, waving the flashlight. The facade of the mausoleum loomed before me. I pressed on the hidden seam, and the door swung open without hesitation. The stairs yawned at me. I climbed down, dust particles floating in the beam of light. The tunnel was silent. All the urns had disappeared except for one. The last vessel stood on its pedestal. I approached slowly, my chest tightening. The air smelled of damp stone and cursed breath. On the pedestal stood a single intact and sealed jug. Inside, in an oily black liquid, was a small, twisted figure, the body of a boy, no older than 8, in a fetal position, his eyes closed. My throat tightened. It was Marcus, the 6th child, the last one who still had to be freed. I swallowed my revulsion and lifted the lid. A rush of stale air hissed out. I lifted the vessel and poured the liquid over the pedestal, watching it seep into the carved stone figures that were still chained in relief. The moment the last drop seeped away, the tunnel shook. A shrill cry, half plea, half triumph, echoed from the darkness and multiplied into dozens of voices chanting, "Free us! Free us!" The carved chains glowed ice blue, and then shattered in a flash of light. The glass on the pedestal shattered, and the boy's form floated away as a pale mist. He took on a solid shape, a small figure with mud-encrusted clothes and hair stuck to his scalp. His hollow eyes blinked. He looked at me with an expressionless face and then smiled weakly. Behind him, the other 6 children materialized: Annie, Robert, Emily, Jacob, Lily, and the girl who had led me. They stood in a semicircle, their faces unreadable. The air vibrated with grief and relief. I felt tears running down my cheeks. They were free. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my throat. "Go," I whispered. "You're safe now." They all turned at once and floated toward the tunnel entrance. As they passed, the fog curved inward and carried them like ghosts on a current of air up the steps. I heard soft laughter, childlike, joyful, then silence. The slab began to close. I rushed forward and slipped through, just as it closed behind me with a final, echoing click. I sank, trembling, onto the gravel. The cemetery lay silent under the mist of the lanterns. I stood up slowly, my knees stiff. I walked to my patrol car without looking back, my nerves on edge. As I drove away, I dared to glance in the rearview mirror. The open grave was empty. The facade of the mausoleum was made of nondescript stone. The fog shifted, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw small figures at the gate waving before disappearing into the night. At home, I emptied the last fragments from the jar into a box and locked it in my closet. I took a shower, washing away the mud and fear, but the memory of 6 pale faces remained under my skin. I lay in bed with my eyes open, waiting for the final twist. Hours passed. At 3:13 a.m., my phone vibrated with a message from Sergeant Miller. "Case closed. Good work. Get some rest." I stared at the text, my thumb hovering over read. I typed, "You're free." But something followed me. Then I deleted it. Finally, I fell asleep, restless and fitfully. In my dreams, I walked along the paths of the cemetery under a blood-red moon. The laughter of children echoed and then dissolved into whispers. "We'll protect you. We'll protect you." I woke with a start, my heart pounding. The closet door was closed. I lay still until dawn. When I got up, I discovered 6 small handprints on the fogged-up window of my bedroom door, muddy, childlike, arranged in a circle. There were no footprints leading away from them. My breath caught in my throat. They had followed me home. I grabbed my flashlight and pressed my palm against the glass. The prints were cold and fleeting. They faded under my touch, leaving only damp rings. A soft voice, little more than a whisper, floated through the silent house. "Thank you." I exhaled, relief and fear mingling in my chest. The children were safe, and they were with me now, guardians in the fog and shadows. But I knew that the last part was yet to come, the reckoning for what I had disturbed and unleashed. The first rays of dawn found me curled up on the floor next to my bed, the weight of 6 silent protectors pressing down on the air around me. I blinked at the small muddy circles on the window, children's handprints dissolving into nothingness, and remembered the whisper, soft and determined. "Thank you." My body ached with exhaustion, but my mind was racing. One section remained, the reckoning. I got up, put on the clothes I had worn every time I returned to Hollow Pine, and gathered my equipment: flashlight, gloves, service pistol, and the tattered notebook in which I had recorded every detail. I left the closet door ajar, as if inviting it in. I needed witnesses. I needed courage. At 10:50 p.m., I was back at the cemetery gate. The caretaker was not there. The guardhouse was dark. The iron bars were open, an invitation or a trap. I stepped inside, The fog enveloped my ankles like living silk. My breath steamed in the beam of my flashlight. The gravel path crunched under my feet. 6 liberated names echoed in my head: Annie, Robert, Emily, Jacob, Lily, Marcus, and one was still missing. Samuel, the last child, the only one still bound. I hurried to the old part of the cemetery. The open grave lay untouched, its edges softened by moonlight and fog. I knelt down, pressed my gloved fingers into the earth, and lifted the boards. Empty. Samuel's glass was gone. He must have already escaped, or been taken away. For what purpose, I did not know. I stood up and shone my flashlight over the gravestones. Everything was quiet. Then I heard it. A soft giggle, distant, playful, but with a hint of sadness. I turned toward the source of the sound. The beam of light fell on a small figure crouching on a broken gravestone. A boy in mud-stained clothes. His hair stuck to his forehead. He looked about 8 years old, Samuel. His hollow eyes glowed faintly in the fog. "Samuel," I whispered, "you're free." He smiled, a sad, knowing smile, and raised his hand, 5 fingers, then a 6th that curved into something long and thin, like a root or a claw. He whispered, "I have someone for you." My heart skipped a beat. "Who?" He pointed deeper into the old part of the cemetery. Behind him, shadows moved between the stones. I swallowed and stepped forward. The fog grew thicker until the beam of light could barely penetrate it. The crunch of gravel was muffled. The air smelled of damp earth and something even more foul, of decay and ancient grief. I followed Samuel's finger to a crooked obelisk. Engraved on the front was a name I didn't recognize. Eleanor Blackwood, 1892 to 1892, beloved daughter. Beneath it, freshly scrawled in the mud, were the words, "He's waiting." Suddenly, the ground shook. The obelisk cracked along a vertical seam. I stumbled back as a hidden panel swung inward, revealing a narrow shaft leading down into the darkness. Not the crypt tunnel, something else. My pulse raced. Samuel slid off the gravestone and floated toward the opening, where he beckoned me. I hesitated only for a moment. Duty and fear fought within me. Then I followed him. The beam of my flashlight flickered as I climbed down the wooden rungs embedded in the shaft. The air grew colder, heavier. At the bottom, I stepped onto damp boards. The shaft opened into a rough chamber, small with a low ceiling, like a children's playhouse eaten away by time. Toys lay scattered around. A tattered teddy bear, a wooden train car, a porcelain doll with one eye missing. Samuel stood in the middle with his back to me. He was holding something in his hands, a small box carved from bone. The lid opened by itself, revealing the darkness inside. I shone my flashlight inside, nothing but shadows. Then I saw movement at the edge of the beam of light. Figures crouched in the corners. Thin, elongated figures huddled together like insects. Their faces were hidden, but I could feel their gaze. A voice, soft, rough, ancient, echoed from the corners. "Thank you for bringing him." I swallowed. "Who are you?" They stepped forward as one. 6 figures, gaunt and pale, taller than any child. Their limbs were bent at strange angles. They moved with jerky grace, like marionettes. Each of them had a child's glass embedded in their chest, a broken vessel that had fused with the flesh, and in which a cloudy liquid still swirled. Inside, the glasses were tiny faces screaming loudly. I felt sick. These were the children I had freed, transformed, twisted. Their souls were bound to something older, darker. Samuel lifted the bone box. The lid fell off. Inside was a single tooth, blackened and jagged. He held it out to me. "He's waiting," Samuel repeated quietly. "He's hungry." Then I realized it was never about freeing children. It was about appeasing something. Each broken glass container had freed its shape, but bound it to the thing beneath. And the last tooth was the key to its liberation. I staggered back. "I won't let you." Samuel shrugged, his hollow eyes sad. "It is done." The ground shook. The toys on the floor rattled. The walls of the shaft cracked. Wood and stone splintered. A soft moan rose from below, a hunger that echoed in my bones. The figures moved closer, glass dripping black liquid onto the boards. The liquid hissed and steamed. I fumbled for my pistol. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped it. The bone box slipped from Samuel's fingers and fell to the floor. A black mist rose from its depths, a figure that formed into something huge and hideous, a mass of limbs, mouths, and empty eye sockets. It filled the chamber, pushing outward and shoving the children aside. The gaunt figures bowed their heads and chanted, "He has come! He has come!" I pressed myself against the wall of the shaft, my heart pounding. The creature's many eyes turned toward me. A voice in my head whispered, "Offer him the tooth." I reached for the bone box. The tooth lay shining on the dirty floor. I grabbed it and held it up. The creatures' heads turned, their mouths opening in silent screams. The children stepped back, the glasses clattering. Samuel came toward me with his hand outstretched. I pressed the tooth into his palm. He closed his hand. The black mist rose, slid up the ceiling of the shaft, and receded. The gaunt figures dissolved into dust. The glasses shattered and crumbled, and silent faces emerged from them, dissolving into particles of light. Next, Samuel disappeared, a smile of relief on his lips. The room grew brighter. The bone box crumbled into bone dust. The walls of the shaft repaired themselves. The wood slid back into place. The slab swung over me. I was alone in the silence, only my irregular breathing echoing around me. I climbed out into the cemetery. The fog had lifted. The moonlight revealed empty graves, silent stones, a world that had returned to normal. I sank to my knees next to the obelisk. The name Eleanor Blackwood was gone, wiped away as if it had never been there. The dirty scribble, "He's waiting," was gone. I stood up and brushed the dirt off my pants. The grave over Samuel's urn was sealed. No signs of disturbance. The cemetery keeper appeared and squinted into the moonlight. He raised his flashlight. I nodded once. He nodded back and closed the gate. I walked silently to my patrol car. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Hollow Pine Cemetery disappeared into the silence. No one stood at the gate. No fog swirled. The world was quiet. But I carry the bone dust in a vial in my closet, a reminder of what we unleashed and what we locked away. And sometimes when the wind is just right, I could swear I hear a child's laughter in the breeze, and beneath it, a distant, rumbling desire.